I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee to order. Today is Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. This meeting is being recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting laws, consistent with the governor's orders, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of not more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. Maria, can you do a roll call, please?
Ms. Weason.
Here.
Kathy Clancy.
Here.
Mr. Favazza. He's not here yet. Chairman Pope is not here yet. Ms. Prince.
Here.
Mayor Taken, not here yet. And Ms. Watson.
Here.
Maria, can you just note that we have a quorum of the committee? The others will be joining us shortly. There's another meeting going on where the school committee has interest, so there's others participating at that meeting or observing that meeting, so they should be with us shortly, including Chairman Pope. I'm going to wave the salute to the flag. Oral communications. Is there anyone in the audience, attendees, that would like to address the school committee for up to 3 minutes? I don't think we had a statement for that. So I see 2 people raising their hands. So I'm going to start with Marianne Boucher. I'm going to promote you. Marianne, can you hear us? Marianne?
She's muted.
Marianne, can you unmute if you can hear us?
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Marianne. Yes, can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Marianne Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue. I'm going to ask the same thing that I asked the city council last week at their meeting. I attend a lot of meetings, and it's really difficult when you do not know who all the panelists or cannot see all the panelists that are a part of the meetings. And it would be really appreciative for future meetings to know exactly who the panelists who are on the committees are that are in attendance of those meetings. And it would also be wonderful if we could know or even see the attendees, especially when there's a public hearing. For us not to be able to know how many people or who are in attendance makes it very difficult when you're on this side of the screen. So I just want that to go on record, that I think it's really important if there's a panelist as a part of your meeting, that we on this side at least have their name on the screen so that we are aware of who is there in case we would like to send them an email. And we know that they've been a part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. My response to that would be for all the tech gurus out there that I think this is the way Zoom is set up, and it depends on which Zoom you have. There's different models, or each computer taps into Zoom a little bit differently, is my understanding. So it's not anything that we are doing, but we can do our best to, show our faces, and you can see what you see on the screen. As far as the attendees, I don't know if there's an ability to do that, but we will take your concern and see if there's any changes that can be made. Okay, Matthew Lewis. I'm going to promote Matthew Lewis to a panelist to address the committee. Matthew, can you hear us?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. I hope you're all staying positive and testing negative in these uncertain times. I want to say first and foremost, thank you for everyone for all your hard work. But as we approach budget season, I kindly ask that you consider all the hard work that has been put in by the Gloucester teachers and the paraprofessionals. And as we approach budget season, we are keeping an eye on not only the school committee, but the town council and all of those who approve and disapprove of the budgets. We know that the idea that we might not have the funding is out there, but we worked tirelessly, might I remind you, against your recommendation to fight for fully funding public schools in the last couple of years. So we ask you tonight to keep up your promise to keep our students safe and to keep the schools fully funded. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. And if I don't see you again, have a wonderful holiday season.
As well. We will take your comments under consideration. Thank you so much for presenting to us tonight. Is there anyone else that wants to address the school committee? I'm going to give it 10 seconds, see if anyone decides to raise their hand. Seeing none. Okay. Comments from the chairperson, I will reserve that for when Chairman Pope comes to the meeting in about 10 or 15 minutes, if not sooner.
He's here, Melissa.
Recognition.
Melissa, he's here.
I'm sorry. Oh, he's here. Jonathan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm here.
Okay. Comments from the chairperson.
Okay, well, I think I will reserve that till when we start talking about the building project. That's all I have to update people on. But once again, as always, I'd like to thank all the teachers, the nurses, the educational support professionals, the administrators who have all just been working very, very hard. And we're still in session. And I think when we started, we said pretty much that if we made it this far, we'd be lucky. And we have, and we're still going. So once again, and DPW, I don't know where to stop thanking people and the administration of the schools and the administration of the city, which is, we've all been working together to make it possible for students to actually attend school in person. And I'm grateful for everybody that's put in their time. Thank you. Okay. Recognitions. I just gave mine.
Jonathan, I don't have a raise hand button. I think it's because I'm a co-host.
Okay, well, all right, well,
So,
I
I'll
see
change
you.
I just, what?
Go ahead.
I'm going to change you
Okay.
to a panelist.
Okay, thank you. I just want to piggyback on what you said, Jonathan. I want to add the city, the DPW, the mayor's office, and everyone else that worked with us together to get the schools open. I mean, we wouldn't be anywhere without being a team, and the city has clearly showed teamwork when it comes to keeping our schools open and keeping our kids safe. So I just want to recognize everyone involved. Thank you.
Any other recognitions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Student Advisory Council. So Megan and Mia.
Hi, I'm Megan, for those of you who don't remember. We've been doing great at GHS. I got a big list to share with you guys. First off, our NHS students have been doing amazing. As we talked about earlier, we did some Thanksgiving baskets for the open door. Our initial goal was to reach 30 baskets, and we reached 71 baskets. So that was a huge win for us. And NHS, on top of doing the baskets, is doing tutoring, which is amazing. We're doing it through Zoom and in person in our tutoring room. Every Thursday in December, we're doing a ugly like Christmas sweater day, just to, you know, help brighten the mood, bring cheer to the students. Our student council is finally underway. We're having meetings. We're doing meetings through Meet and Zoom, and we're just getting together and trying to make the school year as best as we possibly can. We have our yearbook. We are turning in baby pictures and pet pictures. We're trying to fill up the yearbook as much as we can. And our senior superlatives were just elected through survey, and we're gonna have pictures taken on Friday. Our drama club is doing a virtual play, which is the radio play Disaster. They have casted a full cast and crew. They're having their first run through on Friday, and then their normal rehearsal schedule will begin next week. And then finally, from our former Executive Board President Kate Bevan. She is now at Clemson University, and we're happy to report she's doing awesome. She's doing multiple high placement classes, which is definitely difficult for a freshman in college, but she's doing amazing in those, and she's really excelling in her high placement Spanish class.
Any questions? No? Seeing none, thank you very much, and good luck, and have a good week. It's good to see you all.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to remove for further discussion? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to accept the consent agenda as, approve the consent agenda as presented. And Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza is not here yet. Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince, Mayor Taken,
Yes, just so you know, if you hear something, I'm on 3 different Zooms. I hopefully will think about changing time, please, because it's very difficult now.
and Ms. Watson.
Yes.
It carries unanimously. And we'll move on to our discussions on educational issues. And first up is an update on the schools, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Lummis.
Good evening, folks. Good to see all of you, although it's remotely again. So I'll give you a quick update. We have a number of updates tonight. I'll start with our COVID update. Let me share my screen here. Let's see here. Do you see a presentation? Great, good. All right, so far so good. So, oops. There we go. So again, our primary objective is safe educating as many students as possible in in-person school settings to maximize learning, address our students' full needs, and support community and family needs. And as Chairman Pope said, it is December 2nd, and we are pretty remarkable. As a whole team, as a whole community, I don't think many of us thought we'd be in school as much as we are right through Thanksgiving. There are challenges ahead, certainly. We'll talk about some of those tonight, but really doing a great job supporting our students, our families. Our teachers are doing a great job, our paraprofessionals, just everyone, our food service workers, our principals, all of you. And as Ms. Prince and Mr. Pope said, same with all the support we're getting from the city side as well, particularly the mayor and DPW. So tonight, we'll go through a COVID update. We'll have an update on winter interscholastic athletics. We will go over my goals and evaluation process. We'll discuss sustainable improvement plans. So I'll have a detailed report from O'Malley and an update from Gloucester High School. So Principals Beatty and Cook will join us. And then I have a quick update just on the EGS Veterans Memorial Building Project, including update from tonight's vote at the P&D Subcommittee of the City Council, and also update on the project, on the work of the building committee, school building committee. So let's jump right in. So we'll talk, in terms of the COVID update, we'll talk about citywide data, total cases reported in schools to date, and then also just reiterate the fact that so far there continues to be no school-based transmission. So so the latest information I have is through yesterday. You can see, as I do, we put up the cases for the last, in this case, the last month and a half, really. You can see as they go up and down, we are seeing in the city increases just in the last few days. So more new cases. Over the past week or so, it's sort of, it's increased, but there's been some cases coming off, some cases coming on. But in the last couple of days, we're seeing more. So we're obviously, when I say we, I mean the schools, but just in speaking with Karen Carroll yesterday, the whole city, and of course the mayor, I'm sure as well, really looking closely and will continue to look closely at what happens from the Thanksgiving break. Obviously, families got together, people traveled, kids came home from college, that's those sorts of things. So we're obviously very concerned about potential increase or ongoing increases. But we've been here before, but we have to make sure that, we look closely in case things are new and different, and then keep on increasing. So we're looking at it very closely. Definitely increase in cases across the city. In terms of the schools, it's been quiet until recently. We've got 39 total cases across all of our schools. That is cases resolved over the past few months. 27 cases resolved. We have 12 active cases, and most of those have come since the weekend, or no, starting on the weekend. So 10 cases have come since last Thursday. Really, those 10 cases have come, positive cases have come really since Saturday. We are still in good fortune here in terms of those recent cases have had 0 or minimal close contacts. That's primarily because people got tested or things happened over the weekend after during the school break. So folks weren't, if they got tested on Sunday or Monday, or got, then or Saturday, then they weren't in school in terms of the infectious period. In terms of the way that the Department of Health determines close contacts. We are definitely seeing, we continue to see, and from coming out of the break, close contacts related to family exposure, and are watching our close contacts very carefully. But still, the good news, of course, is still no transmission within the schools. We hope that won't change, but we're watching it closely to make sure. We always watch all close contacts, and we keep in touch with them, and the Department of Health keeps in touch with them to understand if they turn positive or not. Regardless, as you know, whether or not they have a positive test or a negative test, they still quarantine for the specified amount of time. That's determined by the Department of Health and communicated by the Department of Health. So post Thanksgiving break, what are we going to do? Well, we are currently staying in with our in-person hybrid learning models. And as I've already said, we are really looking closely at the data. Nurse leader Jeff Parco is in constant contact with the nurses at the Department of Health. I speak with Karen Carroll regularly, obviously. We get data more or less every day in terms of what the citywide picture is. So we'll continue to monitor that, and of course make adjustments if we need to, and we may need to. We're prepared to. Last week I communicated with families to help them to know a little bit more about what they can expect if we do go remote, and in terms of what a day would look like, what we've done to strengthen from the springtime sort of expectations in terms of attendance and being present in those remote sessions, but also the type of teaching between synchronous and asynchronous, and different approaches to teaching that we would take. Also let them know that we may have a day or two off if we need to make a transition. High school and middle school could transition quite quickly, but it may, because they're doing remote days with elementary, it might make sense to give them a day or two just to ramp up. But mostly, across all the grade levels, schedules would stay pretty similar to what they are now. That would help ease the transition if we do go remote. So again, we're sticking with the data right now tells us to stick with our in-person hybrid, but watching it very closely. In terms of just one other point of data, the wastewater, I don't know the exact numbers, but in terms of the report that was shared last week publicly, we don't have a new report this week yet. You may remember that 2 weeks ago, there was a pretty significant spike in the wastewater numbers. The increase continued this past week, a week ago, but it tailed off. It wasn't nearly as significant as the prior week's increase. So we also continue, obviously, I mean, the Department of Health looks at that. They help us interpret that, and it really helps the city interpret that. We don't do much with that information, actually. But it is, as Karen Carroll has explained, it's a good indicator of what may be coming. And the last piece, this was guidance and advice we gave to families and staff prior to Thanksgiving break, but it still really, really holds. Even though Thanksgiving break is away, our families, our staff need to keep following safety protocols. People do need to know that, even your family and family members and extended family may be the most significant risk to you at this point. Certainly we know the schools are not. And so that means, of course, really, a great way of thinking about this is taking the school protocols into your family. Masks and face coverings, especially with the folks you don't live with, socially distance with folks you don't live with. Shorter visits are always better. Good hand health, hand hygiene. And even though it's past Thanksgiving, it still makes sense not to have meals with people you don't live with. And of course, the state travel order is still in place. So we just want to continue to remind folks that this guidance still stands. It'll stand for quite a long time. And this is really the best way to take care of your own health, your family's health, and then help the school stay in place. So let me pause there and see if there are questions. If there aren't, I can keep going.
Samantha has a question.
Yep.
Thank you. Ben, I apologize if this has already been discussed, but when somebody is close contact in the schools, what are we recommending to them about when they should go and get a test?
Sure. So that has, oh, wait a minute, 1 second, sorry. That has adjusted, is adjusting recently, and I talked to Karen Carroll about that yesterday. We've been, the city guidance has been operating, getting a test, 2-3 days out, that sort of thing, 4 days out. They're also now saying, advising folks that if you are waiting to get a test or you don't want to get a test, it can make sense to, wait until day 8 or so to get a test. And that can help you in terms of, because some of the quarantine rules have adjusted to 10 days instead of 14 days recently. And so that also fits in terms of if you're staying out 10 days for a quarantine, getting a test on the 8th day, getting it back 2 days later can sort of confirm your status. We don't advise people on that. That's really coming from the Department of Health because, like you said, these things are changing. For our folks to be fully up to date on that is sometimes difficult. So just like we did with masks, where we refer to the statewide protocols on that, and the Department of Health contact tracers are really working with the public or our folks on that. Our nurses are informed about it certainly, and we'll advise people and suggest and talk it through with people. But in terms of if it's a family members or that sort of thing, then the Department of Health really helps them understand those rules. Other questions?
Sometimes, sorry, Jonathan, can I just ask
Yeah,
you?
go ahead.
Sorry, I have a child here. My understanding is that sometimes you might not trip a positive until like 5 to 7 days after exposure. So I would hope that just for data purposes, because we're saying we're not having any real spread in the schools, that the recommendation would be more further out than 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, and that's why they made the adjustment. I mean, just to remind folks that regardless of whether you get a test and regardless of whether it's positive or negative, you still quarantine for the whole time, just for that reason. Because developing positivity on COVID can happen, up to 2 weeks after you're exposed. And that's why following the quarantining guidance from the Department of Health is super important. And that's why whether you get a test, whether it's positive or negative, as a close contact, you still remain out for the full quarantine period.
Thank you.
Other questions before we move on to athletics? Okay.
I think we're good to go.
Great. So just I'll give a quick intro. You can see the presentation. Great. So Brian LaFata is here. Athletic Director Brian LaFata is here. He's going to give us an update both on what happened with fall athletics, but also lead into really a review and update of what we're planning for the winter season. I do want to highlight a significant difference for the committee to sort of just address or discuss. Earlier on in the year, of course, you'll remember we came to you with our plans around fall athletics. At that point, the high school wasn't remote. So at that point, we were obligated by to have you vote on whether or not we should participate. I think that was conference rules and MIAA rules. At this point, because we're in hybrid and mostly in person, you're not obligated to vote on this, on our plan here. You may choose to, that's up to you entirely, but just want you to know that difference. But this is our plan, so we hope to do, we'll discuss it further in detail from Director LaFata will, but just want you to know that there is a difference there. A vote by this committee is not required. Of course, you may choose to make a vote to support the plan if you like. So with that, Brian, I'll hand it off to you and I will take the controls and ready to go.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate giving me the opportunity to come on here tonight. Just real quick, the first slide, we'll go through these fairly quickly, as obviously we did this 2 months ago, and a lot of the information is similar, but just guiding into, leading into the winter season, there are a few changes. But to wrap up what we did cover a couple months ago, the fall season. I'm very happy to announce that we did have a very successful fall season. Obviously going into it, there were a lot of concerns and a lot of questions, and we were able to successfully complete each of the sports: cross country, field hockey, golf, and both girls and boys soccer programs were able to fulfill their full game schedule. We did go through our daily COVID screening and temperature checks conducted for every participant. The kids, the student athletes, the coaches, everyone, they're used to it now. It's a daily routine. They did a great job. I do want to highlight my assistant athletic director, Pat Barry, otherwise known as Flip, and my athletic trainer, Alyssa Williamson, were huge with pulling off all of that every day, with helping with the screening, attendance checks, and temperature checks. One of the big things that was a change was obviously the limited fan policy that we had to have in place. It worked very well, tracking of attendance of the fans, as well as the student athletes, officials, and everybody at games. Live streaming, if there is a positive out of this pandemic helping sports, it's opened us up to more ability to live stream and give access to not only our local families, but outside families, people all over basically the world. They want to watch our games. So we were able to do that. Thankfully, Cape Ann Live, headed up by Jim Capillo, Lisa Olson, and Jim Dalpiez. They did some commentating, but they live streamed many of our varsity soccer and field hockey games at the stadium. When we didn't do that, we had thankfully an intern this semester from Endicott who would do it frequently on our GHS Facebook page. So that has opened the door for us to be able to promote our sports for all levels, not just varsity, but the sub-varsity levels as well. One very good news is the positive reviews we've received from outside sources. Obviously, with all of these games, there's a lot of officials that work games all over the North Shore. And many of the officials came here very complimentary of us, of our staff, how organized, thorough we were with the protocols, the guidelines throughout the game, the safety checks, everything that needed to be done, the spacing out of fans and the disinfecting of equipment. So I just wanted to pass that on again, that really comes down to the coaches, the student athletes, the other individuals I previously mentioned in the athletics department that really helped that out. And that leads into the next step, the next bullet point of it did have its challenges, without a doubt, this season. It wasn't a normal season, but the student athletes and coaches did a great job adjusting. Obviously, they probably got very sick of me constantly walking by, pull your mask up, space out, make sure you fill out your COVID screening form, but they did a great job with it. We got through the season very well, and it did bring normalcy. Some of the strong positive points we've tried to bring up in the fall, that this was good for them to get back to some normalcy, be engaged, be active for their mental health. I think it went very well. So just wanted to give you that update on the fall, but now moving towards the winter season. The first bullet point there is kind of an overview quickly of what was announced in August by the MIAA, that this year they did create the 4-season opportunity. as opposed to the usual 3 seasons, and there would be no overlap between the seasons. We obviously just wrapped up the fall 1 season, and we will be entering the the winter season starting December 14th. That runs till February 21st. They did make the decision there will be no MIAA sponsored postseason similar to the fall season. After that is the rare, and hopefully we never have to do again after this year, the fall 2 floating season of February 22nd to April 25th, followed by our traditional spring season that is pushed back the start date and the finish date to April 26th through July 3rd. Notable guidelines for our traditional winter sports per the MIAA a couple weeks ago came out with their rulings for the winter. They will be allowing in this winter season the traditional sports of basketball, boys and girls, gymnastics, both boys and girls, ice hockey, and swim and dive. The indoor track and field team that would typically take place in the winter has been moved to the fall 2 floating season. So they will now join the fall cheer and football, who are anticipated to participate starting in February. And the winter cheer and wrestling that obviously as well would take place in the winter have been moved to the spring season. So they will be now competing and participating in the spring with the traditional spring sports such as baseball, softball, lacrosse, tennis, outdoor track. So those are the newest guidelines as far as our winter sports. On the next slide, this here is just another slide I kept on from the prior meetings we've had. This is just documentation of safety precautions, protocols, guidelines, sport modifications, all the various things on that one link right there. And I know I've previously communicated this with all the school committee members as well as Karen Carroll. Our coaching staff's all well aware of this. So all of these various organizations between CDC, DESE, MIAA, our DPH are all on here. So that's just more for reference for everybody. Now, as far as winter 2020-21, the Northeastern Conference, our conference, we did agree to start all practices and tryouts on Monday, December 14th. We decided that literally a couple hours before the MIAA made the decision to also go with that. In a typical year, winter sports start the Monday after Thanksgiving. So this is a 2-week delay on starting any competition, or any practices or tryouts at any high schools. Games and competitions will not begin until after the new year for our conference, approximately around the January 8th or 9th timeframe. Obviously, we want to give a few weeks for the student athletes to get conditioned and working out, but also to kind of give that clearance through the holiday season of hopefully there isn't a lot of gathering, but any sort of incidents that may come out of that to give that more time. The teams will play a condensed regular season schedule similar to the fall season. For the winter season, it's anywhere from about 50 to 80% of their typical schedule, as there are various types of schedules with the sports that are being conducted. Home fan guidelines will be set more by the home school and facility. We do have in the winter season, there's a lot more outside facilities and venues that we use. Us, obviously, we will use our new field house, but we also use Talbot Rink for hockey. We use the Cape Ann YMCA for swim and dive, and Iron Rail Gymnastics for the gymnastics team. So there may be different guidelines when it comes to some of those outside facilities that might have more restrictions that we might have to follow to go by all the CDC EEA guidelines. At this time, our goal is for at least the basketball and hockey, which is similar to us hosting field hockey and soccer, would be 2 family members maximum per athlete at a game. So that will keep the numbers down. We will have attendance tracking at any of those games. They will be spaced out, wearing masks. Disinfecting will go on between any games, as there are sometimes back-to-back games. So we will space that out. There will be no away team fans. So that was similar to the fall, where teams from outside or parents or fans from the outside teams cannot come into our facilities. At the same time, we can't have our fans going to other schools or hockey rinks to attend games. As I previously mentioned, the live streaming opportunities, I brought it up at the bottom of this screen as well. We are pushing that hard with all of our sub-varsity teams, everybody. Not all the schools are able to do it as much as we did, but everyone's trying their best to make it an opportunity. We did have, it will be very strict in the winter. As far as the fall season, you would see many times at the stadium, we would restrict to who came into the stadium, but there would be fans from outside towns. We would let stand outside of the stadium. It is outdoors, so I wasn't going to kick them completely out of the city. But if anyone does show up at any of our hockey games or basketball games, they will not be permitted to come into the buildings. And one more note on this page would be the swim and dive. Will be conducting virtual meets, which basically means they will not be doing competitive meets in person with other teams. Many of the pools in the North Shore have lots of restrictions and limits on how many people on the pool deck at one time. So those meets will be conducted where they basically swim at their home pool, and within 24 to 48 hours, their competing team will do the same, and then they compare their times. So that is a safety precaution we're taking as a conference to go with that. The next slide. Other notes and different points, things that come up for the winter that may be different from the fall. Co-op programs. Our girls hockey and our swim and dive programs, we do co-op with Rockport High School. This has been a traditional waiver we've had for several years, in our gymnastics program with Ipswich High School. So this is a time when there is a little more interaction with some of these teams. Ipswich High School, they are full steam ahead with participating in the winter. To be honest, a lot of these sports, girls hockey, especially in gymnastics, throughout the entire state, the majority of high school teams are co-ops. Very few high schools are able to support some of those teams with just their own high school. And at this point now, with all the communication I've had within our league and even outside of our league, all schools that are participating in the winter are continuing with their co-ops for the winter season. Rockport High School, I believe they have their school committee meeting tomorrow night on whether or not they will be moving ahead with the season. And then obviously our co-op with them. Status of the other schools. I know in the prior fall meeting, I was able to give a very detailed breakdown on all the individual schools, their status, where they were when they were going to be starting their fall season. This time we don't have as much information as some of the school committees will be having meetings in the coming probably 5 to 6 days. From what I've heard from Swampscott, Peabody, Marblehead, Rockport, several schools have already approved their winter season. Manchester Essex just last night is going forward. Winthrop, who did not have a fall season, is going forward with the winter season. And then there are some that are officially not meeting. As Mr. Lummis had stated at the beginning, this season is a little bit different, where you are not required to have a vote. You are obviously more than welcome to make a decision, hold a vote on this. But any schools such as Masco, Danvers, Ipswich, they are in a hybrid situation similar to us, and they are moving forward without an official vote. Their school committees are aware, but they're just going ahead and they will be conducting a winter season. I will be looking at sponsorship opportunities to assist with budgeting, more linked with the live stream. Obviously, the budgeting was brought up at the fall season, and we were able to make everything work out pretty well. There are a few events that we hold typically in the winter or the holiday season, a holiday hockey tournament and a holiday winter basketball tournament, that do help us significantly with the budget. And we do have sponsors that are approved every year for that. Unfortunately, we cannot hold those tournaments due to COVID. So I will be working with those institutions to try and continue the sponsorship, even though we're not having the tournament, and find other ways to help market their businesses throughout the community. And I think with the live stream, there's much more opportunity to even get them out there. Anything I do with that obviously will go through your school committee for approval. Transportation, we are in the same boat as we were in the fall. There are limits on the seating with the buses. There will be a slight increase on buses due to the fact we can't put multiple teams on a bus. But as we did figure out in the fall, with playing fewer games, the budget did stay pretty much on point. So it wasn't as if we're adding many more buses and playing the same amount of games. So we don't see that as much of an issue. Adam Mayo was tremendous working with him for the first time this fall. We had a flawless fall with all of our teams. All the buses were there. All in all, the teams did well with the spacing out. The coaches having bus seating charts that stayed consistent to help with contact tracing, and the bus drivers were tremendous as well. Levels of play still to be determined. I have an athletic directors conference meeting tomorrow where more will come of that. Levels of play, I'm obviously referring to freshman, JV, varsity, and middle school. We still need to figure all that out as far as the league, how many schools will be conducting for all the different levels. We did not participate in any fall middle school sports. The entire league was pretty much shut down from that. It was a very big logistical issue with many things trying to pull that off. And so I'll be speaking with Lynn Beatty a little bit more about that before we make a final decision. But those are to be determined in the very near future. And then last bullet point on this page is the GHS staff feedback. Obviously, this is very important to you and to us in the athletic department during the fall when you were interested in the staff and the teachers who obviously are working with these student athletes every day in the classroom on their feeling, taking this anonymous survey on how safe they feel with these winter sports. So I did send this out. We did get 54 responses from the staff here at Gloucester High School. Again, this was an anonymous survey sent to everybody, so I don't know who responded in which way. We did ask them how safe do they feel about student athletes that are in their classroom participating in practices and competitions for the following sports. On this page, you can see the first one is basketball, where you've got start with the 27.8%, very safe, 18.5% somewhat safe, 16% neutral, 18.5% somewhat unsafe, and 18.5% very unsafe. So even with 54 responses, you can see it's pretty even across the board. The next sport is gymnastics. Gymnastics is one that people feel a little bit safer. And as you look at those numbers, with the very safe to somewhat safe is in the 56, 57% range, while somewhat unsafe and very unsafe is about 27%, with 14% being neutral. And on the next page are the other two sports that we would be offering during the winter. First would be ice hockey. Ice hockey, as far as the very safe, somewhat safe range at the bottom in the blue and red, you're looking at about almost a little bit over 48% feel that, while very unsafe and somewhat unsafe, they're about 29 to 30% of the staff feel that way, while 22% are neutral. And the last sport is swim and dive, which I kind of look at similar feelings as the gymnastics. Many of the staff felt where very safe and somewhat safe, they were up over 50%. The somewhat unsafe and very unsafe were at almost 28%, while 20% were neutral on the subject. That's it. As a quick overview, obviously, I'm not going to go into every sports specific modifications or guidelines. There's a lot of many pages of that. And myself and the staff have been working hard. I've met with Mark Cole at the hockey rink with how we'll break down everything there. I'm working with the Cape Ann YMCA closely, as well as Iron Rail, but then our new field house, which the kids will get out there hopefully very soon for the first time. We're measuring out everything in there to make sure we're properly spaced out and taking the correct precautions. So if there's any questions, I'm more than open to answering.
Any questions?
Bill?
Laura?
Thank you for that, Brian. That was very helpful. And I'm glad it was such a good fall season. That's great. I live near the high school, so I saw people practicing a lot. I have a question about basketball. Just wondering, it feels like now we're moving from outdoor sports to indoor sports, and we're moving, to obviously a very physical sport, basketball. I'm not a basketball player, but it feels a lot harder to keep kids safe playing basketball. And it feels really like the opposite than swim and dive, for instance. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about, how you think that would really realistically go based on what you saw this fall and based on what you know about the changes to the sport.
Completely understandable question. Basketball would be of the sports that are allowed to participate this winter, probably the most concerning. There is a lot more close contact. They do have about 4 pages of modifications as far as the rules to try and eliminate, similar to what they did for soccer when they eliminated head balls and throw-ins and corner kicks, situations in a game where there would be more compact opportunities throughout a game. They have gone to, in basketball will be interesting because all the sports with fully wearing masks all the time, like they did in the fall, but with basketball, it could be a challenge. So I'm not gonna lie and say that I feel like it's 100% safe, but with the protocols, the guidelines, the spacing, the disinfecting, they're having every 4 minutes of game time, they're having an automatic timeout mask break for everybody. We'll be spacing out people all over the gym to be able to do that. As far as some of the rules that off the top of my head, they're eliminating jump balls. They're eliminating certain aspects of the game where there's inbounds plays where a lot of people can group up under the basket. Our biggest challenge, I'll be honest, that I need to work with the student athletes and the coaches on especially are the intricacies or just like the habits that they've been used to for many years. Their teammates lying on the ground, they want to grab their hand and help them up. They want to give a high five, this and that. And it does happen. You watch it on, unfortunately, at the different level. Like been watching college basketball last night. It happens. Granted, they're being able to get tested all the time. Those are going to be our biggest challenges, I think, right now is that. I wouldn't be on here advocating for it if I didn't think that we could do it. So that's where I am with basketball and hockey. Swim and dive and gymnastics, yes, they are at a different level a little bit. Swimming does have a different element with some of the pool space and everything, but as far as contact and potential closeness, we're going to have to work hard at it, but I'm confident with everyone that the job they did in the fall.
Yeah. I can also share it when you want me to. I had spoke at length with Health Director Karen Carroll yesterday, and can share that with folks at some point if you want me to.
Why don't you go ahead with that?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. She was very clear about going inside. There's a higher level of risk than being outside, which is makes sense. And she's aware of the changes in the protocols. She definitely believes that at this point it makes sense to go ahead with it because of the protocols, because of the sports that are happening, because it went well in the fall. And I would agree with this entirely, need to watch it closely, just like we've been doing in every area, whether that's, because you have community transmission or you have transmission, on a team. Going indoors does raise level of risk, but not to a point, she was very clear with this, not to a point where we should not do it. She looks at that in terms of, is it likely transmitted during the sports? We've seen very, very little transmission between sports. I did learn about one example here, a negative example, which we will not do, which I'll share in a moment. And then also, she, as you know, she looks at the broad view here of health and the positive aspects on students' health, physical health, obviously, but also social and mental health is a really important aspect from her point of view on this. And that far outweighs even the increased risk from going outside into inside. So one thing I'll say about some of the recent things that have been in the media, especially hockey, in talking in hearing today, I learned, I didn't realize this actually for the media reports, but the hockey outbreaks that are happening in the state, my understanding now from one of the leading experts in the state, leading health experts in the state, is that typically those were teams that did not have mask rules. The only time they had masks were during face-offs. And then they also were spending a lot of time in the locker rooms close together and had no rules about locker rooms. That's the opposite for us. We'll obviously have strong mask rules as we always do, and there won't be use of locker rooms. So that for me also helps understand, another way of thinking about it is probably one of the safest places for our kids to do sports, are the school programs. That's where we're going to have the most stringent protocols. That's where those protocols are very public. There's public accountability for that. I think there's, from what we've seen, higher risk likely in private club, that sort of stuff, where it's really just, it can be much more variable, essentially. So that was essentially the conversation with Karen on that. She is supportive of it. She wants us to be vigilant, and she is, as you always know, really, really stresses the importance of following the protocols. which I have a lot of confidence in Brian and his team. They did a great job, as you heard, and I think they will continue to do so.
Any other questions? Samantha?
Mine's more just a comment, and I appreciate, knowing that we don't have to vote, although, I will say, Brian, I appreciate how much work you're putting into this. But I feel like, at least for me, the priority is keeping kids in school. And so adding something right now, in the middle of holiday season, moving things indoors when there's already sort of an uptick just feels risky. And I just want to go on record saying that because I'm uncomfortable with basketball and hockey as being sort of indoor sports and being pretty high contact, and being a former student athlete. I know how hard it is to break some of those ingrained habits that you have while playing a sport. And so I am worrisome of this plan.
Laura?
Just a question based on what Ben was saying around hockey, because of course that was in the back of my mind. Brian, are there student athletes that do both club sports and the school teams?
During our season, typically no. Their full focus, and the MIAA has rules, got the bona fide rule that they're committed to the high school team. So very rarely do you ever see any of the club sports or even like town sports taking place for high school age kids. Some sports say like O'Malley kids, for example, for hockey, they could be playing Cape Ann youth hockey and O'Malley at the same time. But typically when you're dealing with the high school age kids, it's a usual season, 6 days of practice a week, practicing games. So they're fully committed to their high school team, and they're really not going other places to train or to practice with their other teams.
Would that be something, given that there's less control, obviously, or we have no control over club sports? I mean, is that a rule? I mean, can that be a rule that if someone's playing on the team for the high school, they're not playing in a club during that season?
I mean, we could broach that subject. We never have, like I said, we've only had what's considered the bona fide rule, which is they know they cannot skip anything related to our high school events for anything outside. As far as just quickly thinking of the 4 sports that we're potentially going to play right now, between basketball, hockey, I think the only one potentially would be maybe swim and dive. I'm not as familiar with their club teams and practicing and everything, but where it's one of the sports where it is considerably safer, I'm not as concerned, but it is something we could definitely look at if we really felt like it was something we wanted to put a restriction on. Then kids may be making decisions if there is, because there could be a larger, quickly thinking off the top of my head, monetary value. They may be putting a lot more money towards a club program or this or that. And that's when they decide, okay, well, I won't play for Gloucester High School. I'm going to play this or that. And that's just, it is what it is. But
I mean, I'm just thinking about risk, right? If people are in locker rooms on a club, we have no control over that. So that would be a concern to me.
Yeah, understandable. And hopefully it's something, I mean, I know you just use the example, just locker rooms, but in general, the state guidelines for everything, the EA guidelines, that locker rooms should not be getting used for anything, whether you're a club sport, if you're just a public, like a gym that people work out or anything. So locker rooms should not be getting used. Obviously, there may be things, as Ben had mentioned before, that there might have been hockey programs violating or breaking these rules, but.
Mayor,
Mute.
you're muted.
All right. So I know that Karen was talking to Ben yesterday. Yesterday's numbers were different for the numbers that today. So if we're trying to keep students in school, my concern, I don't play hockey. So I know that they're full of gear. They have their shields on. They have all of that. But where do they take off their gear after? I mean, right there, do they put their, I mean, is someone going to say, leave right away, put your mask on, or you're all sweaty, or what are they going to do? Because you know what? The numbers are climbing, and they're climbing every day. So I need to know, I know you say we don't have to vote on it, but if the numbers are climbing and there's going to be a risk, we may not, it may not, all of them may say no. because they're climbing everywhere. So there might not be no sports at all. But the fact that it's just concerns, I'm not too familiar with actually after they finish the game. I watch a game, I see all the gear they have on, but after, Brian, can you explain what happens after they're finished with the game?
Yep, that's the big adjustment they've had to make. And I know it's even started with the youth levels this fall as they were playing hockey, where they show up at the rink in their gear. There's no locker rooms to change or anything. When I met with Mark Cole the other day, and myself and John Parisi with Rockport High School's athletic director, we took a full tour of a rink that we're very familiar with, but now it looks like a different rink because of the way it's set up for safety and precautions for not only the student athletes, but the fans and everyone else that may be involved, even the workers at Talbot. So they do not fully change or anything. They might. The good thing is they won't have their big, huge bags with all their equipment that they usually lug in and out. So they'll have their smaller bags, and they're going to have masks on all the time. So when it comes to, it's going to be a tough adjustment, I'll be honest, for away games. They're going to have to get on the bus. They have their own seat. They have their seating chart. They got their mask on, and they've got their gear on. They're not going to have their skates on yet, but they're going to get on a bus and get off a bus with their gear on. And unfortunately, that's a sacrifice they need to make right now. They don't live in the, so that's where they are. But yeah, as far as locker rooms, and I've already had the conversation with our coaches because Talbot rink's one of the nicest rinks. I'm not a hockey guy myself, but just doing this for a couple of years now, I realize how lucky we are in Gloucester with the rink we have and the facilities and the staffing that they have there. But unfortunately, I've told the coaches there's no access to your locker room this year. It is what it is. If you guys want to try and play this, you're going to have to bite the bullet on many of these usual amenities that you have at Talbot.
Kathy?
Brian, what were basketball and hockey the ones that had the most discussion of happening among you and the other athletic directors and the league?
Yeah, I think for everybody, those are just in comparison. Well, to be honest, when you're looking at all the traditional sports, wrestling would be the number one for winter. And obviously why wrestling was pushed out even to not to fall two, but to the spring. I think the mindset with wrestling was to give it more time, maybe a vaccine comes out, this and that. But if it really came down to it, as far as making adjustments for sports, if we had to do wrestling in the spring, we might put the wrestling mat outside. They might wrestle outside if that's approved at that time. So I think that's the mindset with that. So there were a couple other sports, the cheer still, indoor track had different reasons why it was pushed back to the fall too. But for the sports that are still able to play per the MIAA, basketball and hockey for everyone would be the higher concerns compared to a gymnastics and swimming, with just so many other elements that we've got to keep our eyes out for, not even just on the field, but or on the court and on the ice. It's the logistics around the game.
Yeah, I do know from the soccer games how careful the umps were or refs were in terms of, paying attention to the modifications and making sure people were, apart and, calling penalties and whatever. So I do know it was taken very, very seriously, which I think gave everybody a little more comfort that, the kids appreciated the opportunity, but, people accountable, which are the coaches and the refs, took it very seriously as well.
Yeah, definitely. With those two sports as well, basketball is probably of all the sports between fall and winter now that have had the most in-game adjustments. So we had a lot for soccer, but basketball is going to have a lot of things that look different. Hockey didn't have as many on ice because they have so much gear and everything. The big thing with hockey, as the mayor said, is the outside logistics of a locker room and dressing and spacing them out spacing them out on a bench. They're so used to sitting right next to each other on a hockey bench or a basketball bench. As I said, I was watching college basketball last night, taking notes of how college teams space out their entire staff and their 12 to 15 man team. So it won't look like the usual days at the field house here where it's one long line of players right next to each other. They're going to be sporadically spaced out. And coaches, that's part of the tough thing right now is some of them like to yell. They got to yell even louder now to yell through their mask, but also to be able to have everybody hear them.
But no fans to yell over, so that might help some, or fewer fans.
Samantha?
I guess, I'm for basketball in particular, I don't understand the point of the spacing when it's such a high contact sport as it is. Like, it seems contradictory just in nature. You know, you're face to face with players. And so it's great that they're spacing on the bench, but that's not the reality of the sport. So, you know, again, like, it's just so contradictory to everything that we're doing. You know, in the schools, we can't be more than 3 to 6 feet away from each other with a mask. So it's just something about this that just doesn't seem like it makes sense in terms of safety.
Yeah, there are, I mean, like we said, that is the sport of all of them. That would be the one that raises the most flags. Just quickly looking at, as I said, the 4 pages of modifications. I was not a hockey guy, but I did play basketball, and it can have its moments of being physical, but just seeing some of the rules, like Kathy had seen with soccer, they did make some modifications that sometimes it didn't look like soccer. That's really going to happen a lot in basketball, was some of these rulings of closely guarded. They have only so many seconds and they're going to blow a whistle if you're too close. Freedom of movement, where guys are setting picks, they can't set them like they used to, or screens where guys would try and block people and free other teammates up. There's a lot of rules like that as soon as these came out, I sent them to the coaches, just like I did with soccer and field hockey. And I told those coaches, like, take a really close look at it. Those coaches at the time, we kind of had the option to move to a fall 2. This right here, and I told them then, is it even worth playing the game, where they all felt it was, and it ended up being good. It's the same situation like this with the basketball, that some of these rules, and I feel we have 2 great basketball coaches, but unfortunately one's only in his 2nd year with us and one's in his 1st year. That his 1st year stepping in is going to have to coach a game that is looking completely different than he's played and coached his whole life. So.
Okay, any other questions? Well, I'd just like to say I was lucky enough when Ben and I were at the Sawyer Metal meeting, we got to go into the field house, and it's absolutely gorgeous.
I want to see it. I want to see it. I'm so excited to see.
Yeah, it really looks great, and hopefully you'll be able to zoom in and see some games. The other thing people should remember is that hockey players wear masks already. You know, they wear plexiglass masks. So will they be wearing cloth masks in it as well?
Yes, all of them. As Ben had mentioned, some of the other leagues previously, the rule was just players that, like centers that take face-offs, are wearing cloth masks. But now everyone on the ice, everyone in the rink, stadium, anyone affiliated, all players will have to have masks on.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that the guidelines about close contacts is 15 minutes in the course of a day in close contact with somebody. Although you are in close contact, the duration is very short. It's very quick. You're not standing there for a long time, or even 20 seconds in close contact with somebody. It's going to be up to the school committee whether you want to take a vote on this. We don't have to. They can move forward without our vote. So the only purpose in taking a vote would be to, if you don't want it, I would seem to me that if you didn't want it to happen, Mayor Taken.
Okay, so I text my Karen Carroll because I was nervous. The numbers are climbing, and I asked, and because I know yesterday's numbers were different for today's numbers. So I said to her, are you okay with the school sports considering our numbers were climbing? Ben said you were for yesterday, but they're climbing today. Yes, for now, but think that we should watch carefully and it doesn't jeopardize the in-person learning, which inside sports likely could, but not if we watch ourselves. And the same thing with the mask. And I just told her, the hockey players are going to wear masks because she thought it was just the shields. And but we are going to watch. And if the numbers keep climbing, just like I thought too, I think that the governor probably will call those sports off anyways. But as for right now, she's fine with it.
And also to be, oh, go ahead, Laura.
Well, just to say, based on the schedule Brian showed us, they could start, if this starts, they could start practicing, but there wouldn't be any games till after the new year. Right. So, about a week after New Year's, it looked like, right? So we'll have a lot more information, and perhaps the governor will have changed things, or, right. So they could starting to practice, there is a little bit of a gap there.
Yeah. And there's even a gap between now and when practice starts on the 14th, and of course, as we know, things could change between now and then, for the whole school system, so yeah, so I think there is, we'll continue to watch this very closely. We have to, we don't want to jeopardize athletes, student athletes, all our students, in any way, shape or form.
It's not that I didn't believe you, Ben. It's just that it made me nervous. That's all.
That's all right. But
Good to be safe.
she confirmed, right? She confirmed.
Okay. So any further questions or discussion? Okay. Is it the will of the committee to vote on this tonight? What is the timeline, Brian? You're not going to start until the 14th. Do we really have till the 14th to decide? Or if there's any issues, people want more information?
If you're going to vote, it'd be helpful to vote tonight, because our next meeting is until the 16th. And there's communication to families and athletes. Obviously, there's preparation, obviously, in so many ways. You can also add a meeting next week if you choose to, but that's up to you as well.
Well, who said we wanted to vote?
No,
who wants to vote?
If you want to vote, it's
He
if.
says, we all said our comments. To vote on it, it's like giving an approval 100%, and nobody here feels 100%. So we try with the practice or whatever, but I'm not going to vote. I'll just vote present. There's no reason to.
Samantha?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to vote, but I think it would be good to, sorry about the little voice. We need to, what happens if the numbers go up next week? Then do we revisit this, or who's going to make that final determination, and how much would the numbers need to go up to sort of decide whether or not we're going to go forward?
I can answer that. First of all, the numbers go up. It has nothing to do with the sports or schools or whatever, because if it starts happening in the schools, then we have to do something. But numbers are going up. We just had Thanksgiving. We went from, to be truthful, we went from like 20, what did they say, 30 something overnight with 31 within 24 hours. So everyone's getting tested. They're all coming back from vacations. They're all doing all that. So now until probably another 2 weeks, we'll see the numbers going up and down, up and down. So unless that we know that it was direct contact with the school or with the sports, and they're going to keep an eye on that to find out exactly who's contacting and where it's coming from, then that's how we'll do it. As soon as they say, well, we had 5 kids in school, pull it. There's no questions about it. Ben will pull them. So won't Brian. He doesn't want to jeopardize everything and his whole teams. So I have that much confidence in Brian, with the sports and everything we've done. I have confidence in that. So I think that's why I said there's no reason to vote. But the fact is numbers are going up, people. And it has nothing to do with the schools right now, because we haven't even had sports. We have nothing. They're going up because Thanksgiving, like everyone said. So.
Yeah, and then Samantha, we don't have exact, as we've shared with you, we don't have exact numbers on when we call things. There are, as we have shared with you, metrics around when we bring in testing into the schools, that sort of thing. But I don't know how we could possibly have exact metrics on when do call off sports. If it's not safe to be in school, it's not safe to have sports. And I think that's a more likely scenario, I think, than that.
Melissa?
Can't hear you yet.
Melissa, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. First, I just want to say, Brian, thank you so much for your enthusiasm and all the hard work, your department, you and Pat Barry and everyone else is helping you to keep this sports program going during this very trying time. I truly appreciate it, because I know there's many moms and dads out there that want their kids playing sports as long as they can. So I just wanted to thank you. I agree with what the mayor said tonight. I don't think we really need to take a vote tonight. I trust in all the agencies, not only locally, but throughout the state that have all eyes on kids in schools and the activities going on. While the numbers are climbing, I'm not going to lie, I'm someone that's not leaving my house right now if I don't have to. But at the same time, I don't want to stop families from having as much normalness as they can in their lives if they're able to. And I believe the agencies are making the right decisions right now. And we even have our own local nurse agreeing that we can continue right now, but keep a very watchful eye. So I just want to say thank you. And I am very supportive of the program still going forward, and know that we will have difficult conversations if the numbers get that bad, but we're watching.
Kathy?
I want to echo that, I definitely have confidence in the, Karen Carroll's involvement with our superintendent and with our athletic director. I know there was a situation in the soccer season where, the coaches got together, or the athletic directors got together and kind of pushed things out. So there is definitely a lot of discussion going on that is being very flexible and aware of certain situations that that try to keep the athletes playing, but also keep in mind the safety aspects. And I would only assume that if there are particular pockets or whatever, the same flexibility or the same care in those discussions would happen, and modify things as they needed to be if one sport has something going on or another. But let's hope for the best.
Just a note off of that. Yeah, there was during the soccer season for the entire league, we had some situations that we worked on as athletic directors. We talked every day, but I want to note Jeff Parko and his staff, how great they've been with communication and helping us when we had our situation, and we quickly handled it and everything went very well. Him, Sylvia, and Leora were tremendous with this. And so they make it much easier for us, and I have all the confidence in them and whatever they tell us as far as contact tracing, close contacts and everything. And I'll be honest, as we talk about basketball and some of these sports, I've already talked to my staff about, as far as basketball, it's heightened because when you consider a close contact and everything, it's a lot harder to determine. So say for a team that was spaced out such as soccer, you might only have 4 or 5 close contacts. Or basketball, if it happens, there's a good chance teams are getting shut down. So they're going to be aware of that early on, and as am I and the staff, and the kids are going to have to realize that you need to really go above and beyond with the precautions and protocols, because if one player or there's one case, everyone's getting shut down at this point. It's not going to be a pick and choose and figure out the contact tracing. It's going to be an entire team.
Laura, did you have a question? No. Samantha? All set.
All right. Jonathan, does it make sense to continue?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Brian, and to you and your staff. I appreciate how detail oriented you are. I appreciate how thorough you are. And also I really appreciate how well you communicate, both with myself, but also with your families, and also with your coaches, and really appreciate all that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. So the next item on the agenda are the superintendent's goals and evaluation process. So let me bring that up. Okay. So you had since prior to the last meeting where it was on the agenda, but we needed to table it just because we had more important things to discuss then, and the meeting was going late. You've had all 5 pages of my goals. Just to summarize a few things here, in terms of process, the goals have already been reviewed, and feedback was provided by the program subcommittee, which is very helpful. Thank you. The goals will be reviewed and approved by the school committee is the next step. That may happen tonight. Later on in the year, the committee will publicly discuss my job performance. That needs to begin no later than June 1st of each year of next year and each successive year. And then a written report of my evaluation is a public document for all the public to know. And then any written statements that individual committee members also make are also public documents too. So we're just in the beginning of this process, obviously. Usually it happened a little bit earlier, but as you know, getting the schools open was new and different this year, and I didn't start till a little bit later. There are 5 goals. I've laid out 5 goals. Each of them has a description. They have a measurement and timeline. They have evidence to support the achievement of that goal or progress towards that goal. And they also I've delineated which applicable, I've identified 2 or 3 applicable standards and the indicators from DESE's superintendent rubric as well that really that goal applies to. Tonight, I'll be showing you and the public the description, but of course in your packet, and like as I said, since before last meeting, you've had the full document on hand. So focus on goal 1 was really was and continues to be first and foremost, which is open and operating schools safely based on clear health metrics, a balanced view of the risks to the overall health and well-being of students, and also based on the guidelines published by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So originally when we started this, started the year, and even going back to my interview process, identified goal 1 is open schools safely. Have had to modify that because we're doing well in operating them. So open and operate is really the key piece here. In terms of just pointing out some of the specifics in this goal area, 1 is obviously the actual opening, the identifying of a hybrid model that would prioritize students being in school, and then being able to maintain that. Part of that is working with our team to do it thoroughly and do it in a way that is communicative and openly communicates updates to folks, and then adjust as we need to. So those are some of the areas in terms of just how to go about that as well. So goal 2 is building every, just as I hope I've said again and again, and I hope I've acknowledged, that the work of our school system is much more about a team effort, a collaborative effort, than it is about a single leader. For me anyway, the team that I lean the most on is our leadership team, which consists of our principals, assistant superintendent, our directors, so special education, English language education, human resources, IT, food services, transportation. So those folks make up our leadership team. And for me, it's about the individual capacity of all those leaders, but then also how we work how we work collectively. I am fortunate. This city is fortunate. Our educators and our families and students are fortunate that the people that make up this team are really, really high quality. I have had the good fortune of stepping into a position which just has great individual and collective leaders making up this district-wide leadership team. And it's really my goal to continue to build our work together, build how we collaborate, make sure that we can get even better at that now that I'm at the helm of the team, essentially. But then also that we're focused. We're focused on a few priority goals, and that those are held commonly by all of us. And those really zero in on equity, service to our staff and our families, and then excellence for all students. I will say this, so that's in terms of those specific areas, some of the specific areas in terms of where we'll be working on, we'll be working on just in terms of how we meet our regular meetings, make sure those are productive and sort of well organized. We will, I've organized the meetings a little bit differently in the past. So we have an operations meeting and then sort of instructional leadership meeting. So to make sure the meetings are most relevant to the folks who are in those meetings. Another way is including additional people in that meeting, in those meetings. So human resource director, English language education director as well have not been included in the leadership team as much in the past, and those roles are crucial. to the success of our schools in our district, and supporting folks, families, as well as staff members. So I've elevated those two folks, both to build their individual capacity, but also the whole group needs their support and expertise on a regular basis. And then another area that we will focus on is about culturally responsive leadership. We have a diverse district, a district of many different types of folks and families who are, both locally, local, but from across the globe and across the country. And we really do need to continue to understand in an increasingly diverse community and culture and world, how to be leaders that can support and lead all sorts of folks, all different types of people, individuals from diverse backgrounds, and also lead schools that have all sorts of different types of folks from diverse backgrounds and cultures and languages. So that's an area we'll continue to work on and go more deeply with the leadership team. Let me pause there just for these first two and see if there are any questions or clarifications, anything that you see on the full document that you want to ask me about. I don't see anyone from who I can see, so I'll keep going. So goal 3, understanding and embracing the diverse culture and city of Gloucester and the Gloucester Public Schools. So one thing that's pretty clear about Gloucester is we have a culture of how our schools operate, and it may be a broad-based culture of the city, which all cities and towns do, but these are both made up of a wide variety of people, of backgrounds, of neighborhood, school, community cultures, and so this is really about understanding, embracing, really learning about the different folks who live here and work here in our schools, different roles people have, the different backgrounds and neighborhoods people hail from. And that just takes time. It also takes time, and it's quite different in a world of COVID, where it's not easy for me to meet folks in neighborhoods or our community organizations or our community events. But it is paramount for me to get to know people, understand what's important to them, understand what their values are, understand what drives them, and understand what's important to them and their children. So this is an ongoing. I'm doing it through work, through partnership, through regular meetings, and through a lot of listening, asking direct questions about what people care about, what's important to them, what we do well, what we have to do better, and then listening, a whole lot of listening, and from that learning about learning from and about a tremendous diversity of folks in many different roles. This is going quite well considering the constraints of a COVID world, but it's something that I will keep doing for years to come, and will need to. The goal 4 is about participating in the new super induction program. It's not about completing it because it's a 3-year program. As I detailed in my goals document, we'll be working on strategy development, data analysis, instructional leadership. I'll be using that and then interviews and data collection to develop an entry plan by the end of this year. Typically it's done a little bit quicker. That entry plan will eventually lead into development of district-wide goals and a plan to achieve those goals. That'll be done collaboratively. It'll be done over the course of this year and into next year. Typically, this is something you like to complete in 1 year, but because of the pandemic and all the situations around it, it'll likely take longer than that in terms of developing an entry plan and then a long-term plan for our schools and district. Again, I do want to stress that development of those district goals and a plan to achieve those goals will be done in collaboration with many folks, not just by myself in any way, stretch or form. And then goal 5. Oops. making 4, and this was actually very helpful. I actually originally had 4 goals, and then the program subcommittee, in addition to giving me some clear suggestions on a couple of other goals, really pushed me to include one on long-term capital and long-term and facilities. This work took a decidedly positive turn for the better. Once the city voted to support the East Gloucester Veterans School Building Project. We still would have this as a goal. It just would be taking a much different shape. And on this, so really 3 primary areas in this. One is obviously East Gloucester Veterans School Building Project, which folks in the building committee would tell you I've taken a much larger role in over the past month and a half or so. Making sure that the management of that, direction of that is on pace, but also working very well with the building committee, making sure that the building committee and the school committee, the work of the building committee and the work of the project is really being well documented, well communicated, and working with the school committee to make sure they're well informed about it, and understand clearly what their role is and when they really have to take a real role in that at certain points. Another area is the long-term facility needs around Beaman and Plum Cove. And how do we maintain those buildings, particularly as they will not likely get an overhaul in the near future, but presumably will get an overhaul in the long-term future. So that's 2 of them. And the third is just continuing to strengthen the working relationship with the Department of Public Works. The Department of Public Works does tremendous job for us. Really for the last 6, 7, 8 years, the work they've done to maintaining our buildings, being very responsive to the needs in our buildings on an ongoing basis has been really great. And whether that's through revising our MOA or having regular meetings or just being on the same page or regular planning, both year to year, but within years, I feel like that we can strengthen that partnership, and I'm committed to doing that through regular meetings, through regular planning, and then really getting on a good system, not just within the buildings, but across all buildings. So let me, I'll stop the share here or the presentation and see if folks have areas that I can either elaborate on or clarify.
Any questions?
Or if you have areas that you want to suggest or refine.
Joel?
Thanks. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what we discussed at programs. I thought a lot of Ben's goals, were good both on topic and good that they had, measurable metrics. I don't think they all have to be, I will do this thing X times, but I think it's good to have a good blend of ones that have some, objective criteria. And so I want to thank Ben again in front of this group that he was willing to, put some goals forward that have, objectively measurable metrics to hold them accountable to. And I have confidence it'll hit them, but I appreciate him putting in there.
Thank you.
Kathy?
I think the 5 goals that you've put forth are, obviously all very important and well thought out, and will be a benefit to all of us as you work to make sure we're going to give you terrific report grades on this and all your goals. I was wondering if there was any discussion or thought to having a goal or having some aspect of the Gloucester High School and O'Malley status. I know we're dealing with a very different year than we normally would have been had we not been in this, health crisis. But given that they're in, different states of, needing progress,
Yep.
Was that given any thought or, and maybe it's too early for you to think about what that measurable goal would be, but I look under kind of building your collaboration, capacity and collaboration of the leadership team. And maybe there's an aspect of of more assessing what the need is as opposed to actually a goal of accomplishing. You know, you as an income, you know, with your fresh eye as a superintendent.
Yeah. It's a good question, and it speaks to one. It speaks to just I mean, it speaks to a lot of things that are important. One is just, you know, focus and how many goals to have, obviously, which is always difficult, right? And I think something that schools can often do very poorly, honestly, because what this doesn't, what I want to add is, of course, there's a lot of other work going on, right? There's instructional strength and instruction. There's really, how do we support our EL learners and families more? There is a sustainable improvement efforts, both at O'Malley and GHS, you know, and I probably could go, you know, there's fiscal responsibility, obviously, you know, there are all sorts of different pieces here. So I'm not sure if, and I don't think you're necessarily suggesting this as having a specific goal in this area this year. Two things, I think. One, I think those will definitely be a major piece on the district-wide, you know, plan and district-wide goals going forward. I mean, they really have to be. You know, the quality of our schools and everything goes into that is a number one, right? So I think you'll see that in that as we move forward. And the other piece would be, you know, a big part of building the team is also supporting the team, my support of the team and my support of individual principals. And I think that's a place where I could, you know, I could actually, it's the work I'm going to be doing and do every day. But I think I could probably highlight that in that goal too, in terms of the support providing the principals, and maybe identify that with James and Lynn. It really, you know, one of the areas would be their sustainable improvement plan, you know, and how do I work to support them, help them stay focused, help them, you know, think through how to work with their staff, help them through the budget process on, you know, on areas that help them, you know, so I think that's a place that this type of thing could fit.
Any other questions? We are required to approve these goals, and it's up for vote later on in the meeting. I'd like to just move it up to now, the vote, and I'd like to start with, this was all reviewed by the program subcommittee, and so Joel, if you have anything to add to the process?
No, I think Ben brought it to the program subcommittee for a quick overview. We gave some broad level feedback. He came back with a more detailed set, and then it got recommended up.
Okay, so you did vote and recommend it to the full committee.
So Sam or Laura, this happened, I think, at that one where I had to step out for a little bit. And by the time I came back, we passed it. So how did it go?
Okay.
I believe you stepped out and we voted and approved it.
Yeah. And
Right? Kathy was the alternate, right? Kathy?
So it is coming with an with a recommendation from the program subcommittee. I just wanted to get that on the record. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion that we accept the superintendent's goals for 2020, 2021 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Laura?
Are we making an amendment for Kathy's suggestion?
Well,
no, I mean, I can incorporate that in there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's no problem. And I think, and I'm trusting that James and Lynn will appreciate that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
all right. Any other discussion? Melissa, you have a hand up. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I think these goals are great. Ben, I can tell you put a lot of work into it, and they actually, I think, are really good first year goals for you. I think it's going to give you a good focus on getting to know the school district and our community at the same time. My one request is when you are going through goal 3 and taking note of the cultures in this community and communities that surround us. I just hope that as we hire staff, that those cultures are reflected in the staff. last year I was looking through all the student graduates, and to me, I just felt like our staff didn't mirror the cultures in our school as well as they could. And I think that's a conversation for another time, but just be mindful of that as you dive into that goal. I think it would be helpful to see the staff reflect our community a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely, Melissa. And you'll see that that'll come up a little bit in our next school committee meeting as we give her an update and report on English language education in the district, and English language learners and our teachers, and what we need to support those students and families better. And then I'm trusting, or not trusting, I'm confident that it'll be in a long-term plan as well. It's a crucial piece of how we understand, teach, and really help our students succeed. And that's one really important strategy. So thanks.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yeah,
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
and Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Okay, it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And we can move on to sustainable improvement plans.
Okay, so I believe Lynn, Principal Beatty is here, and Lynn, will you present? You have this. Okay, so Maria, if Lynn could have the ability to share her screen, that'd be great.
Okay.
I already have it. It's green.
Oh, yeah, then you have it. Yeah.
Let me give it a whirl and see what happens. Nope, it's disabled.
Okay.
Okay, you should be all set now.
Okay, thanks. I'll try again. Hold on. Sorry, I've got a glitch. Okay, it's not going to let me share unless I quit for some reason.
Let me
So-
see if I can fix that on my end.
Okay. It may have to do with the fact that I just enabled it to do that, to share, which I hadn't done before.
Okay, see if you can do it now.
Yep, looks like it's going to work.
Great.
Okay, can everyone see that? All right. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm going to make every effort to be succinct. It's a lot of information, so if I gloss over things too quickly and you have questions or want more details, don't hesitate to ask. Leaving out details usually isn't something I do, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to start with just talking about why O'Malley is in sustainable improvement status, just to refresh memory. We are in this status voluntarily at this point. We scraped into the 15th percentile in the state on MCAS, and it's at the 10th percentile that you're required to be in. We chose to be in because 15th percentile means that 85% of the state is performing at middle school at a higher level than us. That's our aggregate. And then on top of that, our accountability percentile for our high needs population is at the 5th percentile, so 95% performing higher than us. And our high needs population is 50.4% of our enrollment. At least it was in 2019 when these stats came from. So that's a pretty significant part of our population. We had a really positive experience working with the DESE staff from the Sustainable Improvement Office, and they're going to continue to work with us this year. So I'm confident that we're going to come out of this quite strong. We built an instructional leadership team as a result, and in the 2019 to 20 school year, they worked with the objective to develop a plan based on data, evidence, research, evidence-based practices, input from the faculty and community, and they've done a great job to put this together. We worked all of last year, December through June, beyond the school year to the end of June, And then a subcommittee continued to work to draft the actual plan throughout the summer. So altogether, it was 636 total hours spent on all of the steps of the process. These are the members of the team. We tried to capture from all areas and subjects in the school. And for the 2021 school year, I also will have in addition the English Language Arts program leader, Stephanie Kutcher, will be joining us, which will be really helpful because literacy is one of our focus points. Additionally, we put together a community stakeholder group, which has only met once in June and will be pulled together shortly. And again, we tried, based on feedback from our school community, to put together a diverse community that represented the different populations in the city. So we have a variety of members, including some students, to help us out. We had a great conversation in June when we met, and I'm looking forward to continue to work with them to help our plan grow strong. So faculty and community and stakeholders all have input into this. Our faculty and staff was brought along the way. We worked through several different PDs and faculty meetings over the course of the year, looking at the data and evidence that we had gotten from our own research and from our SchoolWorks targeted site visit. And they've been brought into the mix throughout as we give updates. We have communication document that goes from every instructional leadership team meeting and makes sure that the faculty's in the loop. And in addition, of course, as we've started to implement some of our initiatives, it's all about them being part of it, providing input, and actually doing the work together with us. So the work that we did. There were a lot of steps. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but again, there was data from the SchoolWorks site visit that we received. We drafted a portrait of an O'Malley graduate. We identified many data sources, analyzed data in a subcommittee, created the stakeholders group. We developed problem statements. From those, we developed goal statements. We researched evidence and research-based practices to respond to our needs and to set our goals. And then we defined strategic initiatives, actions, and measurable benchmarks, and finally wrote the improvement plan. The timeline was changed a bit given the pandemic. So the plan was submitted middle of September. I've not yet received any formal feedback from the plan, but I hope to do that soon, and we've already started the work. So the biggest portion of what we did was the data analysis and using that information. So here is the list of sources that we went through. Of course, all the MCAS results in English, math, science, looking at test items, especially in science, because we had some questions there. Attendance reporting, discipline reporting, our own report cards from the student's voice, the views of climate and learning, our local data, which at that point was Easy CBM in English and math, and our own benchmark writing assessments, as well as Big Ideas math and behavior support referrals. So from those we came up with 20 problem statements. TSV gave us 10. We created 10 of our own from this data and developed 4 high leverage goals that are aligned to the turnaround practices, and then our initiatives, actions, and benchmarks come from that. These are some examples of the kinds of resources we used for our research under the topics of professional learning communities, PLCs, using data to inform instruction, a focus on literacy, universal design for learning to provide flexibility and variability for diverse learners, continued development of our advisory curriculum, and then feedback cycles and instructional coaching. So all of those are things that are incorporated into the plan. These are the turnaround practices that all of these plans are based upon. Any of you who went through the process of developing the innovation plan, I'll talk about the connection a little later. It's a very similar process. These practices were tweaked a little bit, but these are in essence the same practices that were evaluated in 2010 and 2011 to create the plan that was implemented in 2012. So it's leadership, shared responsibility, and professional collaboration. And the second one is intentional practices for improving instruction, student-specific supports and instruction for all students, and then school climate and culture. So we have our goals aligned to each of those. I'm going to dip into another document just quickly to show you what that looks like. It's going to be very hard to see because it is very small. So I will try to make it a little bigger for you. See what I can do here. That this is part of what we submitted to the state. Is that at least somewhat legible for you? So it's starting at the top. What you see here are our turnaround practice goals. So in other words, what we set for turnaround practice 1 is for our school to have a clear, shared, focused, and consistent mission, vision, and core values with shared oversight, accountability, and support for working toward that mission and vision. You have this information in the executive summary. That's part of the attachments for tonight's meeting. And so for each of these turnaround practices, there are a number of initiatives which are listed right below here. We also, going through the document, I just wanted to show you how we played this out. We thought about the turnaround practices because in many ways they overlapped. We thought about focus areas that they fit under. So we thought about the narrative of how we would go about implementing these kinds of things into our school, regardless of whether they fit under one or more of the turnaround practices. We wanted to know that the category, or while we were working with them, we called them buckets. So we did start with one bucket being the focused, clear mission and core values, so that we had those to inform our practices. There were 2 initiatives that fit under that. 1A is review, evaluate, revise our current core values and use those to inform all school decisions. And then there's a benchmark. If you follow over the columns, it's an implementation benchmark and a benchmark with timeline that we'll be checking in on. So though we've started some of the work now, we haven't yet reached the point where we've done a benchmark check-in to see if we are on course. I can tell you that we are on course with this one. And then we move down to educator collaboration, which relates to developing professional learning communities, looking at student work, using data, refining the ways that we run our teams, a lot of systemic changes to make sure that we're doing things effectively and efficiently and really staying on target for looking at students' performance and developing and designing and implementing instruction that responds to the data that's in front of us. Third bucket is the curriculum scope and sequence specifically to literacy across all subjects. Then instructional practices, and this is where intervention and multi-tiered systems of support fits in with our universal design for learning, which we've been doing a lot of work with. Then accountability and feedback, making sure that we're paying attention to, are we using SMART goals with our students, with our staff? Are we giving appropriate feedback? Are administrators able to get into classrooms and give that feedback in a timely manner to coach teachers? And then lastly, the positive culture and climate with a focus on safety for students. We want to increase our attendance. We want students to feel like they have voice and choice. So these initiatives and actions are dependent on that. So with regard to the innovation plan, 2 key things kept coming up. How to make it sustainable and how to create an instructional focus that people understood the representation of. What we found was that despite the innovation plan being in place, doing all the work and having the plan written, people really aren't clear on what our instructional focus is. So we have some work to do on that. We found in our data, in our research, and as we wrote the plan, that we basically came up with almost the exact same plan that we already had written. So then it begs the question, why didn't this one work? And what kept coming up was the sustainability, the feeling among the staff that we start things and they go away. We start something else and it goes away, and we start something else and it goes away. So the word sustainable is really critical for us in this process. The practices that were put in place related to the innovation plan maybe could be tweaked a little, but they're sound practices, they're research and evidence-based practices. They work, they've been around, they can work for us. So what we need to do is figure out why they didn't work and how to make sure that we stick with them so that they do bring to fruition the improvements for our learners and the success for our learners that we're looking for. So some of the things that come up in this new plan that are also in the innovation plan really prominently, a focus on literacy across all subjects, and this is both reading and writing, needing growth and improvement. Students wanting voice and choice, and they want to feel that their learning is relevant to them. In the innovation plan, we focused on project-based learning, which could be increased and implemented and more widespread on a consistent basis across the school than it is. And partnered with that, focusing on presenting instruction in a universally designed learning method, so that we are always thinking about providing variability, providing options, providing different ways for kids to access, so they feel a connection with what they're being asked to do and how they're being asked to do it. Sales comes into play with that as well, and conduct responses, how we handle students' conduct and how we motivate them as members of the community. And finally, this is sort of a collection, using data, functioning as professional learning communities, implementing consistent interventions. All three of those are prominent goals in the intervention plans that have somehow gone by the wayside, need to be in the forefront, and they're back and prominent in this plan as well. So we definitely need to take a look at why some of the things fell off, and strengthening or revising them slightly to make sure that we can do what we need to do for our kids. So where are we now? So far, we've got a good start. We have our instructional leadership team back together, meeting tomorrow actually. And they'll be doing all of the work around progress monitoring the plan. They'll be looking through, for example, the core values. We've done work as a full faculty. They'll get the last run on that. They'll be looking at data. They'll be helping facilitate the functions of some of the things we're implementing around, PLCs, how we decide to do interventions, any changes we need to make about how we run, maybe our schedule and things like that. They'll be coordinating and looking at how we're doing with all of the initiatives and the actions in the plan, and taking account of the measurements as to how we're doing, and helping to make decisions about whether we need to revise or tweak things. Honestly, this is not the best timing for us to be implementing something like this with everything going on with the pandemic. I'm really proud of the fact that this team motored through the whole spring and into the summer, and that we built this really phenomenal plan. We put a lot of energy into trying to make sure that it connected to things that we know are sound practices that we've already done, as opposed to going out and looking for a whole lot of more new things that put things on the plate that were different when we didn't need to do that. So we stuck with what is researched and sound, so that we can hopefully make connections for people to stay on course. So ILT is together. We did make some changes, being mindful when we built our staffing and schedule and program for the pandemic. We thought about ways that it would connect to this plan. So we have a weekly flex block, which helps us bring in a multi-tiered system of support. Teachers are starting to really get traction on how to think about what their kids need based upon how they've been performing, and flexibly grouping the kids for that session during the week to give them targeted instruction. We have a study skills course twice a week, learning assistance for support, questions, etc., that kids might have, also twice a week. Of course, our smaller numbers in class is helpful, expanded homeroom, and the advisory for the social emotional learning needs. Right now, we have additional special education staff that's not expected to stay, but we're trying to take advantage of everything we've got in place now and think about using it towards what we need to do for this plan. We did get additional ESL staff for our English learners this year. We need more, just throwing that out there. And we now have specialists involved with the houses. So all of these things were changes now that are supporting what we're trying to do moving forward. Universal design for learning. We started this last year before we went into the plan. 5 of our teachers attended a 3-part workshop. They did a professional development in January, I think, with the staff. And then the district was able to engage Katie Novak. We've had 10 webinars that a lot of our staff has taken part in. We've had self-paced sessions in the 10-day professional development. Katie did a webinar for us as a full faculty on the 3rd, and we have a graduate course that about a half a dozen of our faculty are involved in taking. And we're going to continue this work. When I go into classrooms, I try to give people feedback on what I see with regard to flexibility, different kinds of access that kids are being given, and how the principles are being integrated. Not always necessarily with the language of, oh, here's a UDL principle, but commenting on how we're providing flexible access to our learners. Core values, we've gotten also a good start on. We so far have had the staff review the current vision, mission, and belief statements. We focused on the mission statement in particular and drilled down into what actions people could identify that represented the parts of the mission. Then we drilled that down farther and identified key terms that resonated for people. So what you're seeing in this word cloud right here is what the staff came up with about a week or two ago. And these are the keywords that they really feel resonate, are important, and we want to be part of our core values. So the next step is to take these and try to generalize patterns and categories that they hopefully fall into. For example, you might, collaboration might fall into growth, or it might fall into community. And so we'll decide, what are the key terms that will represent us, 3 or 4 terms that we will know cold, that will be part of who O'Malley is, and that represents the lens that we look through when we make all of our decisions and take all of our actions. And our goal is to have something very simple and memorable, not something lengthy and narrative or a long list of values that we could never think back to in the moment. They really have to be part of who we are as educators and as a community. We started professional learning communities work on the 3rd. We introduced that through working with our student review teams. For those of you who might not know, the student review teams meet weekly in our current model. That's when our house teams get together and talk about kids. And the goal of those times is to think about what our kids are demonstrating that's a challenge, how we work as a team and put our different heads together to try to come up with solutions. And we're formalizing that into using protocols that specifically call up data. Intervention plans are designed, we try them, revisit back, and we try to make sure that we're targeting the very specifics of the cause that is contributing to the students' lack of success. We have a lot of resources for this, and as we look at, what the root causes are, is it the curriculum? Is it the instructional practices? Is it the environment in the classroom? Or is it something about the learner and what they bring in that's the cause of the problem? And then we've got a wealth of resources, including the principles of universally designed instruction, our district accommodation plan. We have flex block instruction. There are a variety of ways, in addition to our counselors for social emotional support. So that's gotten a start. It's a change in practice as opposed to a more casual conversation where people are talking about kids, for good reason, but not necessarily in the most efficient way that will get us toward a solution and success. We're well on the way with advisory. This is our 2nd year of a weekly advisory curriculum. It was developed by a team using Castle curriculum, Second Step, and bully proofing, and it is a homegrown curriculum unit that stretches across the year. They're continuing to develop lessons. They provide them to the teachers. This year it's hosted for each group of kids in their homeroom groups. So it's the same person they see every day in homeroom who runs their advisory. And then also, in addition to this, we have extended homeroom where we're doing reflection and mindfulness practices, and our study skills course also dovetails with this for personal growth and habits of mind. Literacy practices is not yet together. On Tuesday, we'll be doing some work on literacy. and reading comprehension and using some of the tools that we have like Newsella that provides different reading topics in 5 different reading levels so that we can really meet kids' needs. And we'll be focused on rubrics and components of writing, critical thinking, all within all of the subjects. So across the board, we know that communication is a part of every single subject, whether you bring it to a full-blown 5-paragraph essay, or whether you are simply creating a video or a slideshow. All of the critical thinking and organization of ideas that's involved with a writing piece also needs to happen for any of those other modalities of communication. Fiscal impact, of course, there is one. We do have some grant funding coming that we're using for stipend for our instructional leadership team to continue, for the advisory curriculum to continue to be developed, etc. We will need staffing if we really want to implement intervention beyond what we're trying to do with FlexBlocks. We do want to keep a continued commitment to our science lab environments. GEF has been really generous with that, and we want to make sure that it stays in place. We have a new assessment system for reading and math, Star 360 this year. It's already reaped benefits. We did our first set of data team meetings today, actually. And it was such a difference to have the team be able to use the data they were getting and really get to the point where they were building lessons based on the group of kids that the assessment identified as having urgent need right from the get-go. That's a place that we weren't able to get to from the Easy CBM assessment. So people were really excited. A couple of the teachers who had been there a long time commented that it was the best data meeting they've ever been to. And people could really start to understand the connection between good, helpful, meaningful data and how you can use that information to implement instruction really immediately, as opposed to data that's up at the 40,000 feet level and doesn't really help you do anything different in your day-to-day teaching. We do have some tools that we've brought in. Newsella ELA is a literature, nonfiction and fiction collection that provides resources for our students. It's part of our social studies content curriculum this year. It has a social emotional curriculum. It's all, like I said earlier, different articles that come in at different reading levels, and that's going to really help us with our reading comprehension. And there are other technology tools and then stipending the work groups. So all of those are things we're going to need to figure out how to continue to fund in order to move forward with our improvements. Questions?
Any questions?
Lynn, if you could stop the share, there we go. Thank you. Already did it. Thank you.
Kathy?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So thank you, Lynn, for all the effort and hard work, and I'm sure a lot of time, and to the staff that has helped you put this together. I have a question of the study skills course. What exactly happens in that block for the children?
Sure. They have a number of the special education teachers built a curriculum that the foundation of it is executive function. And they also have brought in things like goal setting, organization, note taking. So they're working through modules throughout the year. They also use some of that time to bring the skills that they're working on into the content that they're working on in class. So they might, teach a lesson on goal setting and then have the kids work on a particular curriculum task and apply the goal setting to that task.
So this is every grade, 6, 7, and 8?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then my other question is the extended homeroom.
Mhm.
I know you said they focused on mindfulness and reflection, and I'm just curious, when you go into those classrooms, what are you seeing happen? I can imagine a 6th grader probably not quite knowing what they should be reflecting on without some really specific guidance, and otherwise they're probably just doing their homework for a different class without somebody kind of facilitating and really I think helping them build the skills. I mean, I think both the study skills course and extended homeroom for these things are great to teach the kids. And hopefully it becomes part of who they are. So hopefully next year you don't have to do those same kids, you just do sixth graders, right? So anyway, so I'm just curious about that.
There are prompts that the guidance department puts together for the homeroom time. So sometimes they're mindfulness practice, sometimes there's a reflection question, sometimes there's a discussion question. So it varies and they rotate. They will do one for each day of the week, and then, you know, after a few weeks, change them up a little bit. You know, it does give them time to, you know, take attendance, get their materials organized, you know, do the pledge, all that good stuff, announcements that usually happen in homeroom. And then they have this additional time that we wouldn't normally have. So that other 10 minutes they can use for this. Some groups spend the whole time and continue with it. Other groups finish quickly. The kids, you know, maybe at that hour, or their personalities aren't really about deeply processing different kinds of things, or just, you know, developmentally, they may not be at the place where they're ready for that. But we keep that going so that we want them to think about a practice of thinking about starting your day deliberately, and getting yourself set up, etc. You know, whether we'll continue with the 20-minute homeroom next year or not, I don't know. It was particularly appropriate this year because we were preparing and anticipating for kids who might have a lot of different needs.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And I just want to add one thing on the study skills, and this is a decidedly small sample that I'm sharing information from, maybe about 4 parents and maybe the same number of staff members, but in talking to them about the study skills, that group, you know, two different groups, talked about the importance of having it, the need to continue it, but also we had a nice discussion about, you know, there's X number of students or X% of students who understand what it means to organize your homework or set a goal or prepare for the day or that sort of thing, or where to put things, you know. And then there's a large number of kids who don't get that unless they're taught explicitly those skills. You know, if I can think of my 2 children, you know, one somehow absorbed that, you know, and the other one never really was taught it, you know, and so it's really helpful and crucial for so many students to actually get that explicit instruction, and it helps set them up, whether it's for 7th grade or 8th grade or even beyond. But it's often the case where we expect kids just to sort of have that or develop it on their own. And really, when the vast majority of them benefit from explicit instruction. So it's great to see that's there. It's great to see it's going well. And I think we can, you know, continue to learn how to do it better, I hope.
And I will share that I know some of my son's classmates that are definitely more reflective about how they approach things gave that feedback when they entered 9th grade, that they wish they had those kinds of you know, tips on how to manage a more complicated schedule and their time. Yeah.
Great.
Melissa?
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. That was a great presentation. And I can tell there's a lot of hard work going on at O'Malley. My question is, and you might have touched on it and I might have missed it during your conversation earlier, but the teachers, for their evaluation, they set goals. Are the goals that the teachers set this year in your facility, are they related to the goals of what you're trying to accomplish?
Some are. You know, this year is a little bit unique. The teachers, everything pretty much rolled over. So teachers are working on the goals they were working on last year. I've been working to help people really focus and streamline their goals so that their professional practice goal relates to the student learning goal that they're developing. And, you know, we've made some progress with that, but have some work to do. So, you know, it's quite honestly, they're mostly aligned only because the plan is so targeted towards what we need anyway. So if teachers had set goals for things that our kids need, which they do, and the plan also has things that we need. I mean, they're not specific to core values or PLCs or using data necessarily. They're more specific to the content and the skills that they're working on, but they're going to dovetail right into what we're doing in the plan. People who are new, I had done a few SMART goals. That was one of the initiatives that we put in there. And I actually found that when I went to write SMART goals to present to the staff, that I had done it last year too and forgotten about it. So it wasn't actually something that was new to do.
Yeah.
But some of the newer staff that was here for the first time this year did take on some of the sample SMART goals that we put together that did specifically relate to actions in the plan.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Lynn. It's very reflective of all the work that's going on top of all the work that of just getting the kids into school. So you certainly have done a great job.
Thanks.
And but you've got your work cut out ahead
Yeah.
of you.
It's okay. You know what? It's so refreshing to be focusing on teaching and learning instead of on measuring desks and how far they
Yeah.
need to be apart and that kind of stuff. So it's good.
Yeah, walking around with a 6-foot pole. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again.
Sure.
And,
Jonathan, if I could just chime in here just to wrap up.
Yeah.
You know, the question that Kathy asked earlier about one of my goals is really relevant here, both for myself, but also for the committee. You know, and what I would ask is that the committee, you know, continues to ask us to report back on the progress being made at O'Malley. And also the other piece is help us sustain it. I mean, this is the type of work. I mean, when I was interviewing, one of the questions that came up again and again, what questions and concerns was, you know, what will you do about the middle school? You know, and that came from sort of a long-standing narrative. What I now know is a long-standing narrative about concern about O'Malley, you know, and as I said before, I think a lot of that narrative is out of date, but there still is a lot of work that we all need to do together there. And so that's and going to take sustaining this, as Lynn said. You know, Lynn said focus and sustaining it. That's going to take a number of years. And so I really ask the committee's support on helping us sustain that. And that is, if we start telling you we're stopping some of these things and doing different things, you should ask us some very difficult questions about that, okay? And push us not to do that. It's too easy in education to move on to the next thing. And so, you know, again, if we start to move away from some of these things, ask us hard questions. And the other piece, and Lynn got right into this, is, you know, well, two things. One, these are the right things to help a school improve, and specifically help O'Malley improve, because it's locally organized, it's based on data, it's based on, you know, leadership and work happening at the school, not by some outside group. Okay, it's focused, it's data-based, so it's the right type of work to be done, and it does need support. A lot of the work is about practice and not necessarily require a lot of additional resources, but in some places it will. And so, as Lynn laid out for you, which I appreciate, also supporting us over the years in terms of the, you know, resources needed. That may be people, that may be material supplies, that sort of stuff. But and I'm not asking for the world here, but please keep that in mind to help us sustain this. It will take to continue the improvement at O'Malley. It's already started and underway. It will take a fair bit of time, but keep pushing us on that, please, and keep supporting us and help us stay focused and sustain it. Thank you. And Lynn, thank you very much for your leadership and for all your team's work on this.
Sure.
Really, really powerful work that we can need to stay focused on over time.
Thanks. We're
Thank you.
excited.
All right, moving on to the high school. Oh,
Safafia.
So much. That was great. And it's so encouraging to hear the things that are going to be happening. But I also want to let you know that you have an amazing school nurse. You really do. I'm telling you, some of the stuff that could have been in the school was stopped before it even entered the school. And she went beyond. So I just thank her for me, because school's open because we have nurses that are really on top of it. Our school nurses are amazing, you know, and overwhelmed. And it's been going on for a long time. And so don't forget, a lot of your nurses were working with me first when you guys were on shutdown, and then now with the school and back and forth. So thank them. But O'Malley School, I know some of the cases, and Tabitha's family, you know how we love to talk, and but right on. So thank her for me.
Thank you. I'll be sure to do that. I actually gave her a shout, both of them a shout out at the faculty meeting yesterday. They are amazing. We're really lucky to have them.
thank you, Lynn. So we're going to move on to just a shorter update from Principal Cook about the high school sustainable improvement plan. So James, do you want to show the slides or do you want me to? Wait, couldn't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, I can try.
Okay. Maria, if James could have the
I have the green.
Yeah, I think I made it so all panelists can share now.
oh brother.
It's it says that it's disabled, Maria.
All right, let me try something else.
Okay.
Okay, how about now?
Looks good.
All right.
Yep. Looks like it's, I have to enable it similar to what Lynn had before.
All right, let me try something else.
Or I can just.
Yeah, it's short, Ben, if you.
I can do it.
Okay. Thank you, Maria. And I want to give a shout out to the nurses at the high school as well at this time, since the mayor brought it up and seconded by Lynn. Like that work has been unbelievable, and the closeness and the collaboration every single morning. We're getting together to do that piece of it, so teachers can do the teaching and students can do their learning every day. Thank you, Ben, for showing the slides. So this is a summary of the annual renewal. So we did need to do a renewal of the Sustainable Improvement Plan this summer. Again, on top of the other things we were doing, but it's so integrated into the work we're doing that, of course, as we're planning for what remote instruction looks like, what hybrid instruction looks like, the plan is informing the schedule, the plan is informing the kinds of instruction, the plan is informing the professional development that we did in those 10 days. So it was vital that we do this renewal process this year. Similarly, these are the three priority areas that we arrived at. Kind of similar to what Ben has mentioned and what Lynn has mentioned, and we really wanted to focus on a few things that we could all remember. Right, everybody can remember that we're working on instructional practices, we're working on improving the attendance, and we're working on that 8th to 9th grade transition and partnering with O'Malley to strengthen that transition. So to get to this point, you'll remember a few years ago, we had the site visit from TSV, we did the data analysis, the instructional leadership team, working with each department at the high school and PLCs and designing the plan. Our stakeholder meetings were our site-based council meetings. Then there was writing the plan. Last year, we had benchmarks that we reviewed internally as well as shared with all of you as, at least up until the pandemic in March, sharing those benchmarks. I'll say a little bit more about that as we go forward and how the benchmarks informed the updates. Then we had a review of the year in June amidst the other things we were doing. And then the revision came of that. So these remain our three priority areas, right? As you've heard before, if we start changing things, hard questions about why are you changing the focus? Because this work does take time and each piece builds on the last piece as we get better and better at addressing these areas. So on the next slide, I've grouped, Lynn kind of informed you all about or reminded you about the 4 areas that the sustainable improvement plans have. I've grouped them. So the first 2 areas are leadership, shared responsibility, and professional collaboration is the first. And the second is intentional practices for improving instruction. So here's what we did last year. The instructional leadership team that we created, the departmental professional learning communities that we honed, the school growth teams that we created, the professional development that we designed based on the plan, and then the observations, peer observations, as well as evaluation observations, all went into a focus on teaching strategies that promote higher order thinking and student engagement. So over time, we really found that Zaretta Hammond's work on culturally responsive teaching was very helpful for us in addressing particularly the growing population of high needs students in our district. So that model is called Ignite, Chunk, Chew, Review, right? Activating students' interest and readiness to learn at the beginning of a lesson, chunking the material into manageable pieces, allowing people to process, the students to process that learning, and then reviewing and checking for understanding and reteaching as necessary. So that is a very simple, very easy to remember way of structuring lessons that we're focused on. The other part that really grew and became so important and is so important now is the culturally responsive work around building relationships for learning partnerships. As the high school is that bridge between the student that enters from O'Malley and the student that will be leaving and entering post-secondary education in the adult world, that bridge is about leveraging our relationships with students so that they can become independent learners and entering to learning partnerships with students and families. And then there's the piece of classroom level interventions for students and differentiated instruction using the district curriculum accommodation plan and those classroom level interventions. So that's focus from last year that we carried forward. This year, in the next slide, the work continues. But the focus has by necessity shifted to put relationship building and engagement first, so that then we can work with students on those transferable thinking skills that they'll need post high school. But we know that, you know, with the pandemic situation, that those relationships that we're building with students and engaging them first in the learning to then move to the higher order thinking is important. And how do you do that in a remote environment? And how do you do that in a hybrid environment? So same focus, but we've got a different set of challenges right now. In the next slide, I've grouped areas 3 and 4 that Lynn also shared with you. These are student-specific supports and instruction to all students and strategies to strengthen school climate and culture. So those are areas 3 and 4 in these sustainable improvement plans. So last year, we reviewed, revised, and implemented student study team practices and protocols. We implemented a positive alternative consequences and education program called PACE. We introduced additional support classes, adding an academic skills and practice class, adding a math skills and practice class. We expanded the use and implementation of the district curriculum accommodation plan for classroom level interventions. In English and social studies, we implemented keys to literacy comprehension strategies. And we also introduced an extended homeroom once every 3 days. So those were the things we did for supporting students and also strengthening our climate and culture. This year, in the next slide, you'll see that we're refining our student study team practices, mindful of our COVID-related experiences in the spring, and adapting those to our current environment, the kinds of interventions that we're doing with the student study team. We've enhanced our Bridge program, which is about transitioning students who have been absent back into school. And of course, there's an expanded set of needs this year for our Bridge program that we also added a couple of years ago. We've introduced an attendance team to fully focus on issues related to attendance and revising and implementing those revisions for interventions for attendance. We've added sections of our academic skills and practice class, which is similar to some of the work Lynn is doing at O'Malley and that the teachers are doing at O'Malley. We've added an extended homeroom Monday through Thursday instead of just every 3 days. And all of this has been, again, the same focal areas but our attention has needed to really be refined on how do we use these goals and elements to support students in these remote and hybrid environments. So that's an update on our plan and how we've adapted based on what we learned last year and based on the current situation. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Joel.
So I guess, one of the issues that the high school's been working on or have been working on and continues to work on is related to absenteeism and chronic absenteeism. And, you spoke about it briefly in your presentation, but I'm curious, do you think the progress, was there enough progress made to survive this year's, reset, or is this year kind of put us back to where we were at the very beginning?
I think it's different, Joel, to be honest, right? I think the structures that we began putting in place and that we've put in place even more strongly this year for our intervention practices, it's a good thing we have those, but the situation related to the pandemic is hitting different groups of students than maybe were having issues of chronic absenteeism before, as well as the same students and some of the same issues, right? So it's different. And we're not gonna be able to compare data from this year to first half of last year, but when I talked in the slides about updating and changing and refining our protocols and practices, that's what we're heavily relying on in our student study team and in this attendance team. We've gotten a little bit better on knowing what are the interventions. I can speak this week, we've re-engaged almost a dozen students who were either, mostly disengaged or, partially disengaged through some of these interventions. And it's been great seeing them in the hallways and, on a consistent basis and kind of checking in on them on a day. So it's like right now we're in the middle of the work, right? Like it's the daily work, and a lot of it is refined, that the team's identifying problems and then implementing plans that are very specific to specific students and their families too, to be honest, right? So I know that's a long way of answering your question, but I would say the data is we're not gonna be able to compare the data, but that the structures we've put in place are really important right now, and continuing to be refined. Every single week that we meet, we're getting better at it.
Thank you.
Safafia, please.
I would have gave out a shout out to your nurses too, but since you didn't, thank you. But also, I sent out I got an email from Coach, and I sent it to the governor how proud we are. There is no way that these students could have excelled on the YouTube with Kelsey and Kyra on the robotics if it wasn't for being in school. And first of all, not against anyone, but yes, 2 female students doing robotics. I'm so excited. And the work they're doing is amazing. And where they can go from there is just amazing, where, they are encouraging, well, you can take 2 majors if you want to switch your major to engineering. So I sent that to I was so proud. I sent it to the governor and lieutenant governor and Margaret and Bruce to say, you know what, we are in school, we're doing pretty good, the numbers have changed, but look at what we're doing. And, it's not easy, but yet here we are, our kids are excelling. Yes, there are kids. I'm working also with the DA and the community impact with some of the truant kids we got a wonderful grant for O'Malley. So, we'll be working on that where we can do things with the kids and see what's going on. And I know Ben's been looking for space too, to do some, extra work and extra, after school programs for the kids, so they're working on that one. So we are looking, we are trying to make sure that each child find out what's going on. If they need a hotspot, they need some tutors, whatever is going on. I know Ben's been looking for that and working with the Y and other spaces. So, you know what, I want to say thank you to all of our principals. You're right, Ben, you come in with a team that's really phenomenal. So you're lucky. And because you don't have to just deal with me, but the fact is, yes, and it is hard. I mean, we are exceptional. I know sometimes we get really upset and angry or aggravated. You know, it's COVID and we understand, but we have exceptional program here in Gloucester in the school system. We're outstanding. We took charge, and I go to mayor's meetings and board of health meetings and all the meetings you can think of. And, you know, people that were had zero, absolutely no COVID, were still not in school, and they thought they were all going to go after January, et cetera. And the fact that, you know what, we took the bull by the horns and we did full charge. And we should all here on the school committee, I know it was very the most difficult vote that we ever had to take is to open or not, our decision. But let me tell you, some of the work that I've been seeing and some of the work that's been excelling, you should feel proud. It's difficult. And I want to thank the teachers, because it was not easy, and the fear every day, especially during Thanksgiving. So I want to thank you all, because I get to show off while you guys do the work. So.
No, and thank you for mentioning that, because that sort of work that was shared is very much in line with this overall goal of students applying their learning to problem solving and creating something. It is that meaningful thinking, that higher order thinking that is like at the heart of the plan that I just shared with you. And the attendance part and the 8th to 9th grade transition part feed that big part, which is when they leave Gloucester High School, they have those transferable skills, right? That nobody can take that away from them. Like, that's something they leave here with to apply to wherever they go after. And those, the examples you just gave are good examples of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, James, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, James. Thanks for being here.
Okay, Ben, we want to move on to the budget development.
I thought I would just give an update. Am I muted? No, give an update on the building project, if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
Okay, great. Let me just share my screen 1 second. Go do that. Right. Okay. You see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just a couple of quick updates, and then Jonathan, if you could also then update the committee after I go through it. So the timeline, after I go through the timeline and the building committee, Jonathan, if you could update the city council's work tonight, that'd be helpful. So again, you've seen this before, but I also want to continue to share it with the community. So we're in the getting ready stage here. Continue to work on identifying a swing space. The building committee is going to be meeting next week. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. The sort of design development phase happens between now and through the spring, where we can they finalize all the drawings and get down to architectural drawings where you can actually build a building from them, as opposed to sort of the more conceptual designs that have been done through the schematic design phase. And then breaking ground late summer, early fall, really. And then 3 years or so of construction, and then opening in the fall of 2023. And then the demolition of East Gloucester and restoration of that site goes into summer 2024. So that's just the overall timeline. Working now on a building committee update. So a couple of things that folks have asked for is first setting a regular schedule of building committee meetings. So you can count on those happening every second Thursday of every month, plus some. And here's the schedule through March for now. And those will also be, as they are tonight, on your committee agenda. You know, the next couple meetings will be on the committee agenda every month, as they are in tonight's agenda as well. Of course, the public are invited to all of those. That work through March results in the design development submission to MSBA, which is the next big sort of a deadline, I guess, to say, or benchmark. In terms of building committee, we'll be distributing materials ahead of time to the building committee members and try to do a better job of that. And then that'll allow them to be easily posted after the meeting to an updated website. That should be a little better organized. All the materials have been and are there, but we want to make them a little more accessible, both in how they're presented, or how the presentations that are created, and make sure those are a little more easily accessible. And then also how they're sort of archived or presented or shown or accessed on the website as well. Make that a little bit easier as well. And then we'll be providing, as folks asked, I think in the ad hoc communication subcommittee, we'll be providing updates to the school committee following each building committee meeting, including making sure you understand, what role you have when, as the process moves forward. So be getting sort of more thorough updates on that, especially now as we've are entering a very significant phase of design development, where there'll be a lot of work done by the building committee and the project team, really. December 10th meeting will involve a number of things, but importantly, we're getting the interiors and exterior subcommittees reorganized, and they'll start meeting again to work on interior and exterior decisions. And then we're also going to form a communications advisory group that'll work closely with me to make sure we are carrying through on what I described to you last time, our last school committee meeting, around the various efforts we'll do on communications. And that's, working with the school communities, working with the broader community, websites, public forums when we need them or as we need them, and other efforts to make sure we're reaching out and people are advised of all the progress, which will become more and more tangible as we go through the upcoming, 3 to 6 months and then the next year or so. So Jonathan, if you can, I'll shut this down. Actually, any questions on anything I've said right now, and then Jonathan will give us an update on the city council's work.
Joel has a question.
So as part of the communication with the greater community, I'm also curious to the degree to which it's feasible, collaboration with the community, especially with the neighborhood, that sort of thing. So for example, they were doing core samples at the veteran site the week before Thanksgiving, and like the veteran school population got a notice, and then a couple notices got like zip tied to the playground fence a day or two in advance, saying, "Hey, heads up, the playground's going to be closed." But I'm curious whether the neighborhood was flyered on cars, or whether there was any sort of I would imagine we don't even have a database of like phone numbers and email addresses for the neighbors yet, right? We need to kind of get that going. So part of our communication, although it would be broad both to the committee and to the city as a whole, there'd be some direct communication with the neighbors, being like, "Hey, here's the machinery we're bringing on site. Here's what they're going to be doing. Just want to give you a heads up. Hey, people who might be using the playground, who don't go to the school, but live in the neighborhood, it's going to be shut down for 3 days," like that sort of stuff. I think would be great. And then the second part to that is, again, trying to find ways in which to involve the community, because people who are involved feel like stakeholders and then are more likely to, provide continued support. We talked about it briefly a couple of school committee meetings ago. Like the naming process, will it be a competition? Will there be a submission request? That sounds like something that, needs to happen, and is one of the things that get community at large excited about this project as it moves forward.
Sure. So yeah, Jonathan, do you want to speak to part of the first half about some of the communications? I know you were, obviously yourself, Kathy, as sort of as members of the building committee, were working on this.
Yeah, I reached out to both of the ward councilors, Scott Memhard and Barry Pett, to find out if they had in existence a database that we might be able to use, so we could inform the community in general about what was going on. Neither of them do. So we're approaching that issue another way. We're just going to have to try to, flyers. We put flyers up, around the field, but I don't think we had any capacity to, put them on car windshields or in the doors or that sort of thing. I mean, there's no organization existent. Maybe that's something that we need to do. But, there's nobody to do that work right now. So we are trying to build a database. We're trying to be able to keep the people informed. We talked about putting a sign, sign up on the site that basically had a schedule of events and information on it. We're in the beginning process of trying to figure out how to do that. And any help we could get from the community would be great. But you're absolutely right. We're trying to get them involved. The other thing that is coming up is we're going to start to make decisions about what kind of brick we use, what color, this and that. And we've talked about how we might be able to get public input on those kind of things. It's a little difficult now because, we could set up a display inside the school, but they can't come in the school. We could just set up a display outside the school, but even that's difficult. So we're trying to figure that out, how to get displays up of different materials. There's some plans to make it limited to, staff and school committee members and building committee members within the schools, but how to do the general public, we're not quite. We haven't formed a meeting, but we haven't had a building committee meeting on next week from tomorrow, at which we're going to just talk about all of these things. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Bill or Kathy, Ben or Kathy.
Yeah, just that we will be having a place where people can sign up to be on an email list, and we'll also lean on other folks and community members to have people sign up for that so they can get notices easily. We've also discussed the notion of mailings to the local community, like you might do for a big zoning or public meetings, public hearings that has been done. And also boards. So, real old-fashioned bulletin boards at both sites, both East Gloucester and Veterans. So people passing by can see it, but also they know to look there as well. So those are all pieces that we're putting in place that we are, as I said, mentioned, we're going to have a communications advisory group that will be, made up of building committee members, folks from the school committee here. Kathy and John, Kathy, I think is going to be part of that. And those are the people that we really will work together with to do some of the legwork, because obviously all communications is all legwork, right? It's all, so those are things that we didn't have up and running at this point because we don't have this advisory group in place, but they will get stronger and stronger as we go along. Joel, I can't remember the second part of what your comments.
Request for submissions for naming or what that process would be.
Oh, yeah. So that's something that let me tell you how I would do this, but I'm not sure that's the way that Jonathan, what I can't remember is who's in charge of naming a building. Is it the school committee?
School committee is.
Right,
but right now there's a technical issue coming up. MSBA doesn't like you to, original name was the East Gloucester School Building Committee. And on our meeting next week, we're probably going to vote to change it to the East Gloucester /Veterans Memorial School Building Committee, just for the sake, MSBA doesn't want to see documents coming out with different names. So but that has nothing to do with the name of the school in the long run. Once the process, once the building is opened, or even previous to that, the school committees has the right to name any school building or vestibule or library or anything within the schools. And we have a process in place which, and I think I mentioned this, for naming. Now, we never named a school. This is more about naming, the atrium or something. That is made up of the 3 chairs of the subcommittees to come forward with a process. Now, like you said, this probably should be a fairly public process, and we should get community input on this. But that would be down the road, for probably. Incidentally, the design team wants to know what the name of the school is going to be in the long run, because they have it says it has design implications. How big a sign you put in the front of the school for how many letters are going to be on it. But we're not that worried about that. But I suggested that we work on this in the winter, that we start the process sometime in January, February. Melissa, you had a question?
I'm in the school. I have experience in that from the tech, and it is a pretty long experience, and you do want a lot of public input. So that is something we should probably start now, because it's going to take a long time to come to a decision, is my guess. But my question is, and I don't know, Ben, if you could answer this, or Jonathan or Kathy, because it's for the building committee. We learned some lessons from building West Harris. We had parking issues when everything was done, the fact there was no dishwashers. We heard from the DPW that the wood outside takes a lot of care to keep it looking good. The gym floor, there was some issue with upkeep of the gym floor and the type of materials needed. Those lights, when you walk into the atrium, when you walk in, the big glass bulbs that are there, they're beautiful, but I've heard custodians say changing the light bulbs is a nightmare. So my question is, where at the building committee process does the conversation happen with, say, the DPW, those that are responsible now for maintaining the schools? When do those conversations take place regarding design to make sure that all the materials being used and the design being done is the most effective, and the ability to keep the upkeep and taking care of this isn't pricey and expensive? So when do those types of conversations happen? Because I don't recall them happening when we built West Harris.
Well, they did. They did.
They did, okay.
They happen all along the way. I mean, so they'll meet with Grant and at some point, and they'll have a long discussion about IT. They'll meet with the fire chief and talk about fire suppression. They'll meet with the DPW probably often, many times, but they're not public meetings. This is the design team sitting down with them, and then they come back with the recommendations. They'll meet with the Conservation Commission. They'll meet. There's a million meetings that are going to be coming up, and they'll all be, we'll keep you informed. But there'll be other things that clearly will be decisions made by the school committee, like whether we're going to advocate or put in reusable, washable plates and silverware and trays, or whether, that is a decision that we can make at the school committee, because it has long-term, both labor and material costs. So it's all going to happen. It's just, it's not going to all happen at once. It's going to be happening in bits and pieces. I don't know. Kathy, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. I know Michelle Rogers, all the examples you gave, Melissa, have come up in different meetings. So they're very aware of some, of that feedback of things that maybe could have been done a little bit differently. And so I know that that's definitely part of what informed their site circulation plan and having as many cars off the road and all that stuff. So if you think there's something that they would not have been aware of, please just send it along, and we'll make sure that it's part of the discussion at the time. And Joe Lucido is on the building committee. So we have the representative from the DPW there. you know, and we definitely will be asking those questions. The last time it was Jim Hafey who was on the building committee for a lot of the DPW discussions. This time there'll be Joe, and we'll make sure, based upon your feedback right now, to, you know, to ask Joe, have you, you know, had a broader discussion to know what the implications are for long-term maintenance and short-term, you know, custodial services. You know, we can't be too careful in terms of making sure there's more conversations, not less, so that we understand what the choices are and why one is made over other.
So, for example, this morning, the design team and the our OPM met with National Grid to talk about the energy saving options that National Grid actually implemented the meeting, and they presented all the options of programs that we can go through to save energy if we can meet the goals that they set, you know. So that those kind of things happen, you know, all the time.
Jonathan, is this where we decide whether we're going to do the green school or not, like we did with West Parish, or has that decision been made already?
That decision was made. We've set a goal of trying to meet LEED's gold standards, which is not necessary, which is what we met at West Parish. They've raised the bar considerably since then. It may be more difficult, but you know, the decision that we made to go all electric was part of that. And National Grid is you know, involved in measuring and working with the design team to create systems which are you know, reduce energy use. And if we can hit certain benchmarks with them, we can get rebates from National Grid. So, you know, those were, you know, that's always been our intention, is to make it as green as possible. It'll also be built ready to have solar collectors on the roof. And that's not something we decided. That's required by MSBA at this point. It has to be whatever they call it, device ready for sustainable energy. You know, we're going to have a discussion soon about, oh, I slipped, what was the thing? Oh, systems, like, you know, we can, like, the city of Gloucester uses Siemens, and they make control systems for for all of the air handling equipment. Now, the question will come up was, do we want to specify in our bid documents that we want to use just Siemens equipment? We can do that, but it's like, if they're the only ones bidding, you know what that means. So there'll be a discussion about, and that will, DPW will be involved in that, and you know, National Grid's recommendation, and this is probably something we should be thinking about, or somebody should be thinking about. I'm not sure it's because it's a DPW issue, but they suggested that you hire somebody to do the systems analysis, that because if you don't have somebody on board that's capable of doing it, you know, you might be better off having a subcontractor do that. So there's all kinds of things going on like that. So, you know, we just we'll try to keep you informed as they go along.
And then when we get to the point, what is it in the end when we do that management that they look to reduce costs? What is that called? I forget the term. We did it with West Parish.
Well, we've already gone through.
Was it something at risk? What was the?
Well, we've
something
already
at risk?
construction manager at risk. We've already hired
Value engineering.
WT Rich, but you're talking about what you just say, Ben?
It's value
engineering. That's been done.
That's it.
We've gone through that whole process. We reduced any number of things. I think it was $1.5 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy or Ben, but we eliminated the lintels over the windows, and we went with a very good floor surface, but not the Cadillac. We went with the Buick, sort of thing. And there were a number of other things. So that goes on. What we'll be talking about next, as far as value engineering goes, is putting alternates into the bid documents, so that should the bids come in higher, we have a fallback where we can make some changes and cut back on the expense.
And just so you know, when I'm asking about value management, I'm not wishing and hoping that you're going to take all the suggestions that's offered, because sometimes not spending the money creates problems sooner than later. And like I said, when we built the tech, we learned that with the type of concrete that we use and things like that.
Yeah.
So I just hope that there's real good, solid conversations with the DPW when these decisions are being made, because they're the ones that are going to be caring for it.
Well, as Kathy said, they're represented on the building committee. They're there. They should be there for every meeting. Any other questions? Okay. Ben, you want to move on to, or maybe is Gary going to do the timeline? Are you?
I will, but John, do you want to give the update just on the
City Council? Okay, so right now there are two items that are relative to the relevant to the building project that are before the City Council. And the first one is an amendment to the Article 97 disposition that was passed by the legislature, which is Chapter 152 of the Acts of 2020. And as it came out of the state legislature, it included some language about when the transfers of property would happen. And it included the softball field, and it included the demolition and the restoration of the East Gloucester site. And what we're asking, and I don't have it right in front of me, but it was before P&D tonight, which is where I was, and Ben. It was basically, it's about timing. DPW is not capable of getting a new softball field ready to go for next year. So we need to get that timing down to a specific time, probably 2022, not 2000. So in that light, Mike Hale reported that they're negotiating the contract for the design of the new field right now, that they have set up a meeting with the offices of the softball league for later this week. And we are going to have Brian LaFader attend that meeting also, because one of the they'll be able to play at Mado's until school is out. So they do play in May and June, and at which point they'll have to play their season at another field, because the new field will not be ready. You can't plant grass and have it sustain an athletic field that quickly. So it'll take at least a year. So we need to come up with an alternate. One of the suggestions is be the women's softball field at Gloucester High School, which is why Brian will be there at the meeting. So we're going to come to an accommodation for temporary space for them, and then they'll get the new field. But the other part of it is we cannot transfer the property, East Gloucester property, until we build the new school and the kids move out of there. So there'll be a gap there. So it's really just about timing, the two amendments. It passed P&D unanimously, but it'll go before the city council next Tuesday. Tomorrow night, we go before B&F because they are, now that the city has voted to pay for the school, they actually have to go borrow the money. And that has to go through the city council, as any loan audit does, and there'll have to be a public hearing, but they're going to hear, it goes before B&F tomorrow night. So I'll be there now that I don't have to be with the nurses. So that's just a formality. I mean, that would be pretty insane if they didn't vote to the bond issue after the city's voted to pay for it. You know? So those are the two things in front of the city council right now.
Right. Any question on that before I just jump into the budget calendar quickly? No. Okay. This will just be very quick. Just have it says guidelines, but really for tonight we just have the calendar. You've seen the calendar. The only change here is just giving you the exact dates that the B&F subcommittee will be working on, or listening to, hearing the proposals from our district leadership team. Those are scheduled for January 5th, 6th, and 7th, or will be scheduled for January 5th, 6th, and 7th. So you know those better than I do in terms of annual those presentations and how they work. But that's the only change. Whoops, from what you've seen before. We are already budget meetings with all the budget managers, so it's principals and department heads are already happening. They're underway right now and all scheduled. And then the work from those meetings goes into what will be presented to you in the beginning of January. And then from there is the really underpinnings of creating the budget. It does look like we'll probably be putting forth a couple of scenarios, obviously, because as you can see, between now and any final vote by the school committee in late spring, likely that lots of things will change in the financial in the world, in the country, in the city, and in the financial picture. So that's all for that, though.
Any questions? Any questions on the budget? Okay, then we're going to move on to action items. There are no committee reports. And we've already approved the superintendent's goals. The next action item is the approval of the Gloucester Association of Educational Paraprofessionals COVID agreement. We met in executive session 2 weeks ago, was it? And approved this. So now they ratified? They have ratified this? Yes, so we just need to vote this in public. So Melissa,
I can make a motion if you like.
Want to make a motion?
I move that we approve the agreement between the Gloucester School Committee and the Gloucester Association of Educational ESPs, collectively referred to as the parties, for the school year regarding the reopening of schools from 2020 to 2021 school year.
Second. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a roll call vote, Maria?
Ms. Gleason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
and Ms. Watson.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. And we'll move on to the approval of grants. The first one is the IDEA Special Education Program Improvement Grant for the amount of $27,560. And I
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy. Kathy,
Sorry, I had trouble finding it. Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
and Ms. Watson.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. The next grant is the Gloucester Education Foundation grant in the amount of $2,250 for Gloucester High School Remote Theater and $1,000 for the O'Malley Remote Learning Desks. And I so move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I
Go ahead, Kathy.
I just want to say, I saw an example of what this theater grant is for Gloucester High School. There's a YouTube video that used the same software for Juilliard. And it's really cool how, people are performing or doing their thing where they are, and the software somehow syncs it all. And it really, the power of technology, it makes you kind of teary to see people doing what they love passionately, but separate, but then they all come together. So it's not just that you're seeing this phenomenal performance. It just is such a picture of the time we're in, and having people kind of capitalize and make the best of it and really do really cool things with, still accomplishing what they're trying to do, teaching, learning, performing, and doing it very differently. So I recommend anybody look up this Juilliard on YouTube. Just watch, 2 minutes of it and you'll see the power of the technology. It's pretty cool.
Great. Thank you. Any other discussion? Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince, Mayor Taken,
Yes.
and Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, our next order of business is, but before we go into executive session, is there any other items that people would like to bring up for discussion? Melissa?
Thank you. Two things. First, Ben, can we approve the ESP's contract? Can we put that up on the website so that people can see the details of it, if possible? Can we have it uploaded?
You mean just on the regular website where it is typically?
Where the contracts are.
Yeah, we can do that tomorrow, sure.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to have a conversation about talking about going back to a 7 o'clock start time.
Okay,
I know I, for one, would prefer it, because a day like today, when I worked like crazy all day and got home, I barely had time to eat, and I'm sitting down here for another 4 hours. I know I would like to have a little bit of time in between my work schedule and my meeting schedule.
I agree with you. I was on 3 different Zooms. I mean, the 6 o'clock, it started 5:30, 6, I know Joe has that situation too. So 7 o'clock would be kind of better for me. As long as you don't drag it out all friggin' night, people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Vote for
can I
that.
ask a question?
Sure.
So now it's 9:09, so we would now be at 10:09, right? How late? I totally hear you. I think 7 o'clock is fine, but how late do we want these things to go for a non-emergency issue?
Well, bylaws say
11 for-
11. We can't go past
yeah.
11 without voting.
So it's 11, whether we start at 6 or 7?
Mhm.
We never
Okay.
make an adjustment in that.
Okay, good to know.
So Samantha, what do you think?
I don't have a preference.
She's gonna ask her son what he wants.
Joel?
Oh, that you're gonna ask your daughter.
Son.
Yeah, that's his son, Joel's son, yeah.
Kathy?
Ye- I'm fine with 7. I would just like us to keep the agendas to the manageable point, like this agenda is a long agenda. So
Yeah.
I guess I would probably want the work spread out a little bit, or the topics spread out if possible, if we thought it was going to be a really long meeting. I mean, I think of Ben, who, probably begins at 6 in the morning, and if we bring in our meeting earlier, then he's done
He stopped
earlier.
talking, Kathy, hurry up.
Okay. See
I've
my
been good.
point? Got it. Anyway, I'm indifferent between the two. I'm fine with either.
All right.
At one point, we were meeting weekly. I'm not saying we go back to that, but I'm not opposed, and I only speak for myself. I'm not opposed to there being a third meeting in a month that helps accommodate it starting later. But that's just my preference for myself.
Well, if we have a workload, we can always add a meeting as needed, I think, rather than regularly scheduled.
And you have to remember too, your teachers are on here and they like to know what's going on, and they got to get up early. They have to do the same thing. So let's just cut it. Hurry up. We're going to executive session. Bye, everyone.
Okay. So we'll switch to 7 o'clock without objection. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to go into executive session. Oh, Kathy, sorry.
Okay. I thought we were going to discuss the resolution on MCAS at some point. So if people still want that, I just wanted to bring it up and see what the will of the committee is in terms of this spring's MCAS. I'm not into a big discussion on the value of MCAS as much as I'm thinking we should talk about what the feasibility is for this spring and if we want to make a position on it. I just thought it would be good to discuss.
We can put that on the
next agenda.
Is there a draft of a statement?
Yeah, the MASC has language.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Kathy, are you aware, and I'm not saying I am, are you aware of the conversations that are going on with DESE with MCAS and how they say they're still going to go forward? Have you heard anything?
I have not heard anything. I have not. So
Can I just say, this is on our
need to know that
agenda.
too.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is on our agenda for programs for next week.
Yeah.
So just.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay. All right. Nothing else?
Told you Kathy minds her business.
Okay. We're going to make a motion to go to meet an executive session pursuant with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purpose. As an open meeting may have detrimental effects on the bargaining or litigating position of a public body, and to return into open session only to adjourn. The purpose is to discuss strategy with respect to the collective bargaining with the Gloucester Teachers Association. This is to be a little bit more specific. This is our agreement. We're going to be discussing the agreement that for not a new contract, but the work conditions, change of work conditions, correct?
And I second that motion.
Okay. All right, Maria, is there any discussion? Maria, can we go into have an a roll call vote? I'm losing it.
Ms. Wiesen,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
and Ms. Watson.
Okay, we are going to come back into this open session only for the purpose of adjourning. So we'll see you all in the Google Meet.